This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It is 3 minutes after 10 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Welcome and thank you. I've got an absolute humdinger of an Unhinged headline for you today, and happily it's not from the Daily Telegraph. We're stretching our net, casting our net a little wider. I'm looking at the national prediction of what the latest YouGov poll would do to Parliament, and I'm laughing. Well, I'm not literally laughing, you'd be able to hear that, but I'm inwardly laughing. Well, I might as well literally laugh. I'm chuckling because I've just realised something about modern British politics. It's very, very, very hard to say no way, isn't it? I don't know how much attention you were paying to the local elections on Friday when this story took hold and started sweeping around the country, not just the capital, that Susan Hall might pull off an amazing surprise and actually deny Sadiq Khan a third term. In the event, of course, I think he came back with a stronger result than he's had in the previous two mayoral elections in which he has stood. And even then, when it sounded crackerjack, didn't it, really? I mean, this is the woman who claimed she'd been pickpocketed and then turned up here to do an interview about how crime is rife in Sadiq Khan's London and had to reveal that a community-minded citizen had actually handed in her lost travel card wallet with cash still in it. And yet she was so bereft of political acumen that she attempted to spin that still into some sort of attack upon Sadiq Khan. I mean, the relationship between competence and conservatism, I think, became estranged some time ago. But I still thought, and I don't want you to take offence at this if you voted for any of the various madnesses that we have endured over the last few years, and there's plenty of people in the Labour movement who voted for madnesses. I suppose everyone has voted for a madness. If you cast a vote in the 2019 election, you essentially, if you've cast a vote for either of the two main parties in the 2019 election, then you arguably cast a vote for madness, differing forms of madness. But I had this little voice in the back of my head, even as I was giggling at the idea of Susan Hall winning in London. I found myself thinking, yeah, but I mean, look at what we have done. Look at what ballots we have delivered. I appreciate that we didn't put Liz Truss in Downing Street, but the Conservative Party membership did. I use the term very loosely, put Boris Johnson not only in Downing Street, but replete with a majority of 80 in the House of Commons, despite his entire platform being built obviously and demonstrably upon lies and nonsense and narcissism. The B word is obviously going to make an appearance at pretty early doors in this. We voted as a country, as a population, to become the first population in human history to cast a democratic vote to impose economic sanctions on ourselves. An act of such extraordinary madness that it is still probably not fully understood how stupid that was. And so on Friday, when I sat here sniggling inwardly at the prospect of Susan Hall beating Sadiq Khan to the London mayoralty, I still had a slice in my mind of, well, you never know. I mean, is there anything so mad that you could confidently say to me, James, put your money away, it ain't ever going to happen? Because what I'm looking at today is a YouGov poll that has the Labour Party 30 points ahead of the Conservative Party. I think it was tiptoeing through similar territory in the glory days of Liz Truss's administration. I do think we've seen the 30 before, because I almost certainly made the same joke when Labour was 30 points ahead of Liz Truss's Conservative Party, which was that any other leader but Keir Starmer would be 40 points ahead. I'm not going to explain that joke. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. And someone has extrapolated, Michael Thrasher, I think, has extrapolated from these numbers what it would do to parliamentary arithmetic. And guess how many seats the Tories have? If this percentage is successfully, or rather, if it is being correctly extrapolated, which, I mean, spoiler alert, it isn't. But you can technically describe it as an extrapolation. So Labour on 48, the Conservatives on 18. You can extrapolate from that what parliamentary arithmetic would look like. How many seats do you think the Conservatives would have? I glanced at the clock there to see if I could string out the suspense over the hiatus, but I don't think I can. We're still technically 7 minutes off it. Although I say technically, I'm going to make a special effort today to hit my junctions on time. Keith, you'll be delighted to hear. Would you like to know why? Well, I had a book event last night, and a doctor asked me to, because he likes to time his appointments so that he can listen to the programme in snatches. And if I'm all over the adverts, then it plays havoc with his scheduling. So I'll be doing my best to accommodate that request today, and almost certainly failing. But it's the thought that counts. So, how many seats do you think the Tories would have if this YouGov poll were to be successfully extrapolated into parliamentary arithmetic? I don't know what's actually more shocking, the number of seats the Tories would have or the number of seats the Labour Party would have in Parliament. Absolutely no prizes for guessing how many seats the Reform Party would have under pretty much any extrapolation of any poll. They would have 0 seats, but nonetheless, they will be popping up in every studio and media outlet near you for the foreseeable future. Quite why that is, I do not know, but that is one of the great truths of modern politics in this country. And of course, giving so much attention to the party that tacks to the right with populist nonsense is a large part of the reason why the country is in such a mess. So UKIP 2.0 currently getting its toes tickled in exactly the same way that UKIP 1.0 got, and everybody's sitting around wondering why they can't get medicines. The checks at our ports are absolutely catastrophic, and the GDP has taken a hit, according to Rishi Sunak's former employers at Goldman Sachs, of about 5% a year. But hey ho, let's all treat Richard Tice like a proper politician. That'll work out well for us all. So they'll get 0 seats, no prizes for guessing that. But if you can guess how many the Tories would get, I'll give you the money myself. 13 seats. And the reason why I opened this by suggesting to you that one lacks the confidence in the modern British politics to poo-poo anything. One lacks the confidence to say, and I lacked the confidence to say this on Friday, and I'm sorry. I lacked the confidence to say there is no earthly way Susan Hall is going to win the London mayoral election, because I had this sort of double movement on either side of me. On one side of me, I said, well, there's an awful lot of lethargy out there. Sadiq Khan hasn't run a brilliant campaign. His chief campaigning platform seems to have been vote for me, I'm not Susan Hall, which is a pretty compelling reason to vote for anybody, really, up to and including Count Bimface. But it's not what you'd call a tantalising offer, electorally speaking. And then the other voice, the other pincer, was, mate, look at what's happened over the last few years. Look at what people have voted for. And then you sort of found yourself going, I lack the confidence to say with my full chest that Susan Hall has not got a hope in hell of beating Sadiq Khan. So I didn't say it. And everyone ended up looking stupid on Friday. No one ended up looking quite as stupid as Laura Kuenssberg. But that is, again, one of the great political truths of our time, isn't it? 13 seats, ladies and gentlemen, is the figure that you can extrapolate from this polling to deliver the Tory presence in Parliament. Not 30, 1-3, 13. Lucky for some. 13 seats, while the Labour Party would have 551. And I have the confidence to say to you today, and you can come back and mark my homework when we ever get a flipping election, there is no earthly way the Tories are going to get... Well, there's no earthly way they're going to get 13 seats. I'd bet my house on that. I don't think they're going to get fewer than 100. Once you do the calculations properly and dig into it sensibly, I cannot see a Tory presence in Parliament of less than 100, fewer than 100 seats. Which leads us all to Natalie Elphicke, who will not be in the next Parliament, but is, until the next election, part of the Labour Party parliamentary party. Now, some people have focused upon her politics, her unpleasant politics, you might say, but I'm more concerned perhaps by her personal contributions to public discourse. Her former husband, Charlie Elphicke, was convicted and jailed for sexual assault, after which, and this is crucial, after which... because you are in this country innocent until you're proven guilty, except on Twitter, after his conviction and incarceration for sexual assault, she not only defended him by describing him as attractive and attracted to women and therefore ripe for a sort of dirty politics type hijack, but in doing so, of course, she also maligned his victims. And Keir Starmer, whose tenure as Director of Public Prosecutions saw perhaps even more personal effort put into protecting women from violence and sexual threat than almost any other area of public life, Keir Starmer has invited her into the Parliamentary Labour Party. And a lot of people are very upset about this for reasons that you do not need me to articulate, even though I kind of just have. And what I want you to talk to me about today is the wisdom of this decision, because I think it's genius. I didn't think it was genius until I read a rather splendid thread even, plenty of threats, but I read a rather splendid thread by one of my favourite tweeters, a chap called Andrew Levy, who tweets as Andrew PR Levy, L-E-V-I, which really just crystallised stuff I'd been thinking and introduced me to some thoughts that I hadn't had. And I've retweeted it from my account this morning. I'll retweet it again now so that you can do your proper homework. And I'll probably read it in full later, but let me sort of marry it to what my own thoughts were on this subject and why I am holding my nose and cheering. Can you do that? Not for very long, because you wouldn't be able to breathe in, would you? But no, yes, you can. I'm holding my nose because I think Natalie Elphicke is repellent, but I am cheering the defection because of what it tells you about the Labour Party in general as an electoral proposition, and also what it tells you about Keir Starmer's leadership. This man, I think we can all say now without a single scintilla of doubt or scepticism, this man is utterly dedicated to getting into Downing Street. The question then becomes, why is he utterly dedicated to getting into Downing Street? Is it so that he can see his name on the honours board at Eton College and then not really bother about any other aspect of the job? Is it so that he can keep his sponsors on Tofton Street happy by introducing their mad policies and watching the country go off a cliff 20 minutes later? Is it because he wants to introduce a sort of form of unachievable ideological purity that the left have been crying out for years? No, none of these things. Keir Starmer wants to be Prime Minister because I believe that he wants to improve the lot of most people in this country. He wants to make this country a fairer and more equitable place. And he wants to do that for everybody, not just Labour supporters. And he wants to draw into his project, he wants to win the votes of people who you might not find very palatable. They might be possessed of opinions that you don't find palatable. But they're opinions that have been very carefully nurtured over the last few years. The small boats rhetoric, which I don't think is quite as politically pertinent as Rishi Sunak is betting his house on, well, one of his houses on, but the people who do get spooked by the sight of people arriving on our shores in fairly impressive numbers and don't, through no fault of their own, have a full grasp of what the closing down of legal routes has done and what 14 years of Tory rule and the abandonment of the Dublin Convention, they just get a little bit spooked by it. And what Keir Starmer is saying to them is that you are in my thoughts. I want your vote too. And I think that's brilliant. I really do. I think for Keir Starmer to reach out to people who but were perhaps at their noisiest during Jeremy Corbyn's tenure is an absolutely necessary part of achieving power. Judge him when he's achieved power. All right? If he lets you down when he's got power, I'll be at the front of the queue of people castigating him. But not on day one, you know. You need a Prime Minister in this country at this time with the support of lots of the country. We've seen what happens when minority governments cling on to culture war rhetoric in the hope of sort of fending off a lurch ever further to the right or ever further to the left. So by accepting Natalie Elphicke's defection, by saying, yes, you are welcome, Keir Starmer has sent a message to the country, to people who wouldn't have voted for him and still might not, but he's opened negotiations with parts of the country, whether you're talking about the Red Wall or whether you're talking about the voters of Kent. Keir Starmer has sent a message to potential Labour voters that his umbrella is enormous. Absolutely enormous. But I'm still not entirely comfortable with it on an entirely personal level. More because of the sex offender contributions than because of the political rhetoric. I'm told by people who know what they're talking about that she's very strong on housing and has a very good track record. And when she speaks about the need for more housing and her dissatisfaction with the government, then she is to be believed. Her actions, well, at least her past, backs up her present claims. But my initial reaction to the defection yesterday was, what the hell is he thinking? What the hell is he thinking? But now I think I know. I think I know what he's thinking, and I think I like it. What are you thinking? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. What are your thoughts about A, Natalie Elphicke's defection to the Labour Party, and B, my sincere suggestion that it is proof not only of a pragmatic politics that prioritises power over ideological purity or keeping the base happy, but more than that, it actually speaks to an ambition of Keir Starmer's, the likes of which the country hasn't seen. I could say since Margaret Thatcher, but I'll say since Tony Blair. An ambition for change that demands support that the country hasn't seen since 1997. I normally agree with you, James, writes Samantha, but I think you're on the Kool-Aid this morning. Keir Starmer is a Conservative in disguise. The country has already lost. Neither party are for the people. Sadly, we're scuppered. So that there is the base, with respect, Samantha, that yours is the vote that he's not trying to win. He's trying to win the vote of people who've never voted Labour. And unless he can do that, then dreams of a massive majority are pie in the sky. So I'm holding my nose because of who Natalie Elphicke is and what she has done and things she has said. And I am cheering the decision to accept her defection. I keep coming very close to saying defecation. I don't know why, but that would be most unpleasant. What are your thoughts on this? 0345 6060 973 on the defection itself, but also on my possibly rather footballification flavoured attempt to sell it to you as a net positive.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 23 minutes after 10. It is a defection that has done two things. It has prompted a mixture of approval and disgust, but it's also shown you that for much of the media, at least, Keir Starmer's already Prime Minister. This level of scrutiny, attempts by right-wing media to attack him for accepting the defection of a Tory who was condemning Rishi Sunak in every sentence of her statement yesterday, shows they haven't actually got a clue on how to cope with this man. They really haven't got a clue how to cope with him. The front page of the Times was absolutely remarkable. Starmer splits party by accepting defector. Someone leaves your party and you're in government to join the opposition. In any previous universe, the story is the government has lost an MP. But because Starmer's so far ahead in the polls, because some people think, and I'm not one of them, that the result of the next general election is a foregone conclusion, right-wing media has to try desperately to turn this into bad news for the party which has accepted the defector from the party of government. Just think about that for a minute. Yeah. Stephen is in Watford. Stephen, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello,
I'm really shocked. I'm really shocked by your interpretation of the situation, actually. Let's put the personal side, the private life of her to one side. How big's your umbrella for your Labour Party? If Nigel Farage turned around tomorrow and said, "You know what? I went to sleep last night and woke up."
No, what he'd say is, he'd say, "I got kicked in the head by a horse."
Absolutely, no. Exactly, but you know what? No. But that's the thing. Let's welcome him in. Let's welcome him in. Where does your umbrella exactly stop?
I wouldn't be able to vote for them.
Oh, right, okay. But we've got a lady here who has been at the absolute edge of the right wing of the Conservative Party that has all of a sudden written a letter. She's gone to bed. She's woke up the next morning.
And you know she's not standing at the next election. I should have added that's part of my calculation as well. I think I'd be having to hold my nose a lot tighter or not cheering at all if she was actually replacing the selected Labour candidate. So really.
Right. So why have we welcomed in a lady that stands for nothing then? Because if she's not standing at the next election...
I told you why. Because it sends a message to people who wouldn't vote Labour in a million years that this is a party that can actually improve some of the parts of the country that you want to see improved. Let me read you something from Molly, who it puts it possibly a little more clearly than I managed to. We may not agree on everything, James, but Elphicke agrees that Sunak is failing when it comes to effective immigration policies and effective asylum processing. Until the next election, the people of Dover should be represented by a party with a sensible mission and effective plans. Natalie recognises this. She's also indicated that she's not going to stand again, so I'm looking forward to her handing over to another Labour MP at the next general election, whenever it is finally called. So what's not to like?
I think that I'm worried about what it represents of Keir Starmer, and I think that actually...
it represents the prioritisation of achieving power over an awful lot of other things, because unless you've achieved power, you can't achieve anything.
No, that's very true, but I feel Keir Starmer at the moment is a bit like a semi-final of a competition. Let's say it's a football competition. He's 5-0 up, and at the end, he starts bringing on all his best players. And the only thing that would indicate to me is that you risk an injury. And this isn't working. He scored a hat-trick yesterday. He accepted a defecting MP from the party of government, which he didn't need to. Unless he's saying to people like Molly, "There's room for you under my umbrella." So what's not to like? That's my concern. What does that man stand for? Or actually, he tells you every time he opens his mouth. He tells you what he stands for. But the key message is a sort of Clement Attlee style rebuilding of the country. So everyone's welcome, regardless what your view is on anything.
Not everyone, but a member. I mean, come on. So I'll say it slowly, Stephen. I don't mean that to sound patronising, but we are going round in circles. Not everyone is welcome, but a prominent-ish member of parliament from the governing Conservative Party, who speaking as Keir Starmer, who I need to beat, ideally into oblivion at the next general election, crossing the floor of the House of Commons while lobbing hand grenades over her shoulder at her former colleagues, is absolutely someone that I am going to welcome into the party. So don't bring Nigel Farage into it. Don't bring fantasy footballers into it. Don't bring notional politicians who don't exist into it. Focus on what the leader of the opposition should do with a member of the governing party in Parliament, not only crossing the floor to join them, but also emptying a bucketful of crap all over the benches of her former colleagues while she does it. What's not to like?
I think the win would still have arrived for Keir if he had
You're just repeating yourself now. You have to answer my question. What's not to like about that? On what planet wouldn't he do it?
Because I'm worried about what it says about him as an individual.
We're going around in circles again. I'm talking about what she has done and why he has done it. What's not to like?
I think he's done it for today's headlines and potentially tomorrow's. I don't think he's done it for any ideological purpose.
No one's suggesting he has. You're not addressing any of the points that I'm making. I register and I respect your discomfort, but it is absolutely brilliant politics because you are signing up a member. In fact, to use your football analogy, it's as if one of the opposing team's defenders has started playing for you, and you're cross about it, which is obviously an absurd position in which to find yourself this morning. Alex is in Tring. Alex, what would you like to say?
I'd like to say, normally I agree with you. This time, 100% don't agree with you.
So it's bad news when a member of the governing party defects to the Labour Party?
The thing is...
Well, then you do agree with me.
She would be a Tory MP who was a doctor and decided he couldn't stay with the Tories because of the principles. That's fine. But now, if I go knocking on the door as a Labour MP or a councillor saying, vote for me, the intelligent voter will say, well, no, you've accepted an extreme right-winger in your party for no reason. Why should we trust you? Because we don't trust any politicians anyway. Because you're not going to have the same.
I don't want to have the same conversation with every caller today. Can I cautiously suggest you haven't read her letter of resignation?
No, I have. I've heard. Well, sorry, I've heard what she said.
This is a very simple question. You're on the doorstep now, and I, as a potential voter, am asking you: did you read her letter of resignation?
Sorry, I've only heard snippets of it. She said she wasn't happy about the vote.
Don't gloss over this point here. Have you read her letter of resignation, James? No, I haven't.
No, I haven't.
Okay,
no,
so if you want to use the last fella, the doctor, and his comments on the NHS as a basis for welcoming his defection, then the comparison you would need to make, much as many of her contributions to public discourse have been profoundly pungent, on the question of housing, she has both the track record and credibility. So that's what you'd say on the doorstep. The people of Kent, the people of Dover face an enormous housing crisis, and she's been utterly disillusioned with the Conservative Party's attempts to solve it, and she believes that Keir Starmer in government will be able to solve it. Next question.
And all people see is that...
All you see, because you haven't read the letter and you don't want to see anything else.
No, I have heard that, because I haven't read it properly, I can't say it, but
it's all right, I've given you a breakdown of it now, and I've addressed some of your concerns that were built on not having read it.
Yeah, but people will...
Not people, Alex, you. You can talk about how you feel, despite having been availed of the facts and clinging to your emotional response, which was based, as we've established, on a complete absence of research. But you can't say what other people feel. You can only say what you feel, because you now know the facts.
Well, I know the fact that...
she's not standing at the next election, so quite why anyone would bring it up on the doorstep is a question that only you know the answer to.
Well, they would say, why does Keir Starmer need her to come in?
Doesn't need her. But he just wins more votes by having her. And also, read the resignation letter before ringing a radio station, yeah?
I did...
It's 10:31. Thomas Watts has the headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:35 is the time. Here is the analysis that stiffened my resolve this morning. And I mentioned earlier, it's by one of my favourite Twitter contributors, who has also worked quite a high level, very high level in the civil service. And pay attention, this is important. While understanding the surprise, it was obviously unexpected, at Natalie Elphicke's defection, I'm bemused by the shock in some quarters that Keir Starmer welcomed her. No, not because Sir Keir is a red Tory or a short-term opportunist. His grand strategy explains it. Now strap in, okay, because I found this incredibly compelling. Albeit, as a few of you are quite rightly questioning, albeit that I am probably suffering from a little bit of footballification today. But footballification, when your mission is to get the people out of Downing Street who have been there for the last 14 years, I think is fine. I think it's temporarily permissible to be a little bit footballified until you've got the ball over the line. Starmer's Labour, writes Andrew Levy, is on a mission, even if some in the party don't yet realise it, to make Labour the party of Britain, embedding it in government for decades, creating a national consensus, drawing in the widest feasible span of committed supporters. The purpose is to transform the country. More on that in a moment. Quotes, doing an Attlee, end quotes, but succeeding. Before you raise both eyebrows, consider this. What might Attlee and his colleagues have achieved if Labour had been in power a lot longer? You can't do that by just attracting and retaining voters from the centre ground. You need many of those flirting with the extremes to join you and stick with you. MPs are a different matter from voters, of course. Their views are public. But voters' views are generally secret. They're only shown to the ballot paper in the privacy of the polling booth. Any defecting MP is vulnerable to very obvious political attack. Voters can defect without embarrassment, except perhaps towards their previous selves, and without personal disadvantage. Starmer needs the voters for his grand strategy to succeed. The strategic value of a defecting MP is the signal that it sends. So, the Elphicke defection tells voters tempted by or actually voting for reform and the like that it's okay to vote Labour. A centrist Tory MP defecting to Labour would send a similar message to voters otherwise tempted to support the Lib Dems, for example. So, Starmer's great British party strategy carries risks. Will a particular defection backfire? Will he lose existing supporters? Will his political message to voters be too unclear to cut through? Can he hold together this extraordinary coalition that he is attempting? The point is, and this I think is absolutely crucial to understanding what is going on at the moment in the Labour Party, contrary to his image, Sir Keir is a bold revolutionary. And Andrew writes, I know, that's precisely my point. Look more closely. You don't have to agree with him, but it's best to understand him. It would be safer just to go for a decent general election win, but that is not his approach. Beneath the perhaps superficially bland-sounding Labour Party official strategy, there are in clear sight, if you care to read them, the signs of the drive to create this great British party and put it in power for the long term. These are the headlines. Strong, stable and secure foundations. The rock of economic stability. Strong national defence. Strong borders. And then the foundations give a long-term plan to get Britain's future back, but via 5 fully funded national missions, which you'll be familiar with. Get Britain building again, switch on great British energy, get the NHS back on its feet, take back our streets, that's the crime and antisocial behaviour offer, and break down barriers to opportunity. That's where Keir Starmer's father informs his politics. So a final thought. Which of those 3 foundations and 5 national missions do you think voters inclined to support an MP like Natalie Elphicke or a party like Reform would be willing to get behind or at least consider favourably? I'll read them to you again. The rock of economic stability, strong national defence, secure borders, coupled with get Britain building again, switch on great British energy, get the NHS back on its feet, make our streets safe again, and break down barriers to opportunity. So it's a clever move to appeal to voters. And you're entitled to hate that, but you're not entitled to deny that it's a clever move designed to appeal to voters. You're entitled to think it won't work, but you're not entitled to deny, without detaching yourself from observable reality, that it's a clever move designed to win votes. What do you want your party to do? Win votes. So I'm not being deliberately obtuse. I'm not being defensive. I'm not being overly footballified, except in the context of wanting this lot out now and not finding it funny anymore. But if you want this party to win votes, you want them to win as many votes as possible. And the tension, the balance, is between doing something that might lose you votes, even as it helps you win a few more. That's what Rishi Sunak's doing. That's what Rishi Sunak is doing by tacking to the right. He's losing the centre, who are already drawn towards Keir Starmer's Labour Party. Now, he's reaching further in to the Tory support base for more votes. Because if he wants to undertake a platform of change, a programme of change for this country, he is going to need not only a massive majority, he's going to need more than one term in power. So see beyond the pungency on a personal level of Natalie Elphicke and look instead at the big political tectonic plates, and you will see Keir Starmer trying to shift them for generations. Sarah's in High Wycombe. Sarah, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello,
so I'm a teacher. I'm also a Labour activist. I'm actually starting my own canvassing session late, so I can call in.
Well, fantastic.
I have to admit, when I heard about Natalie Elphicke last night, my first reaction was feeling slightly nauseous.
Yes, same.
I'm a massive fan of immigration. I'm a massive supporter of refugees. I personally host 4 Ukrainian refugees. However, the more I thought about it, the more I'm on the clever strategy for winning votes side of the argument. And the reason is anything which will encourage this Sunak government to collapse as quickly as possible, anything we can do for that is worth doing. And the reason why, James, is the urgent need to get these Tories out. So I'm a teacher and I'm facing children hungry in my classrooms. We've had vacancies for staff since October.
Yeah.
We can't get teaching assistants to look after special needs kids because we're paying them for a pittance and they're going to get better jobs just down the road working for Pret-a-Manger. The NHS is crumbling. The rivers are stinking.
But apart from that...
So I will eat the slimy frog. I will welcome Natalie Elphicke because we need urgently to get these people out so that we can get Starmer in.
And the more shoulders you get to the wheel, the quicker the wheel and the further the wheel will move.
Yeah, and it's also about unifying the country. We've had enough dividing. We've had enough of people in the Conservative Party pointing at, trans people or gay people or woke lefties and saying, you're not part of our national story. You're not in our country. You're out of this picture. Now, I'm not. Of course, there are limits. Of course, there are limits.
And she's pretty close to the limit, I think, Sarah. I think we should be absolutely clear about that. Yeah. I mean, that's about as far as I think I would want the limit to go. And I say that with a bit of caution.
Absolutely, but I'm just about to go and knock on doors in somewhere where people haven't voted for a Labour MP since 1951.
Exactly.
And if we tell those people, "Oh, you're not good enough for the Labour Party," we're a political party to get power and change stuff. We're not a religious sect.
Yep.
So I don't want to be knocking on these doors and saying, "You're not good enough for the Labour Party. I don't like your views on immigration." We need to listen. We need to fix things. We need to fix things in a moral way with using international law. But we can't just start excluding people and kicking people out. And urgently, my children and my school and my staff, they need this government out, because we need to start fixing stuff in this country.
And because she's not running, that exercise in nose holding while recognising the pragmatic benefits is a million times easier than if we were sitting here discussing the fact that Keir Starmer had said she can stand for the Labour Party in December or November or whenever the election finally is.
Yeah, and not least, that would be absolutely dreadful for Mike Pepe. He's an absolute cracking candidate.
He
works
also
really
very
hard.
briefly became a household name yesterday as well, which must have been as much of a surprise to him as it was to everybody else. Thank you, Sarah. A lot of people agreeing with you. A couple of people not, but possibly the people agreeing with you managing to express themselves a little better than the people who are not. Wow, she is brilliant, says Jim. And yes, while she may appeal, says Neil, to a wider voter range, in the long term, if he stands for everything, it can look like he stands for nothing. And that's why I refer you to the thread that I've tweeted this morning, pointing at a grand plan, pointing at a desire for truly radical change. I've never seen anyone articulate it quite that well before, which is why I took the unusual step of reading out an entire Twitter thread by someone else. I'm sure I've read out my own in the past. But I think that's what a lot of people have been waiting for, is that sense that Keir Starmer is much more than just a pragmatic seeker of power. The question of why do you want power is the one that is going to move front and centre as the election gets ever nearer. I'm with that lovely teacher, Sarah, says Jamie in London. It's 10:04. I'm hitting this one on time. If you're in a surgery, I don't know what impact this is going to have upon your experience, but at least one person in that place will be happy. It's 10:45.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 10:48. David writes, James Elphicke teased Marcus Rashford for missing a penalty in the Euros final, saying he should have spent more time practising penalties rather than playing politics. However, I'll never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I do believe it was a party vote, not solely a Keir Starmer decision, and it exemplified civil war within the Tory party. If your opponent is about to sustain an enormous injury and you say, please don't do that because I don't like the weapon, then you are helping your opponent, aren't you? You are protecting them from serious injury because you don't like the weapon with which the injury is to be administered. And repugnant, I don't know what words to use to describe some of the things that Natalie Elphicke has said, but a defection of a member of the governing party to the party of opposition is almost always about much, much more than the individual concerned. I'll read you a little thing that my friend Dan Snow has tweeted this morning in response to an absolutely crackerjack Daily Express front page. And I'm going to leave two gaps in it and see if you can fill in the gaps, all right? You're not allowed to cheat. In 1905, a young MP called Bleep Bleep abandoned the Conservative Party to join the opposition. Just before that opposition scored a crushing election win, which put it in power for 15 years. Shortly after that, Bleep rejoined the Conservatives. Who do you think we're talking about? This perhaps, depending on, no, maybe not actually an exception to the rule, that the issue is much, much bigger than the individual when a defection like this happens. Who do you think Dan is writing about there? Do you know? Do you know who he's writing about? Can you have a guess? Do you want to have a guess? I don't know if you've heard of him. Winston Churchill. Now, just for the avoidance of doubt, I'm not in any way comparing comparing Natalie Elphicke to Winston Churchill. I'm just talking broadly about defections. The Daily Express has a front page saying, has there ever been a more shameless betrayal? Without realising that by any objective measure, you would have to describe Churchill's absconding from the Tory benches just before they faced electoral oblivion as even more shameless than anything that happened yesterday. But yes, in 1905, a young MP called Winston Churchill abandoned the Conservative Party to join the opposition. Just before that, opposition scored a crushing election win, which put it in power for 15 years. Shortly after that, Churchill rejoined the Conservatives. So there it is. You might not like it, but it's politics. Andy is in Glemsford in Suffolk. Andy, what would you like to say?
Well, just thinking what you just said about Churchill, that I wonder if Natalie wanted to meet him on the beaches.
Needs a bit of work, that, Andy. I wouldn't open with it, but crack on.
So centre-left voter couldn't vote for Labour when Corbyn was in power.
Really?
For 30 years I've voted for Labour. I just couldn't. It's too left. But
okay.
we need what you said. We need power, and you can have all the principles in the world and agree with everything everybody says for the Labour Party, but if you're not in power, you can't enact any of that. And Starmer now has brought everybody together. And why wouldn't you? Theatre politics yesterday. I was watching it live on telly, and I was thinking, what's going on there? I couldn't see her head, but I could see everybody looking around at her, thinking, why not? And today she'll be remembered, tomorrow forgotten. And I think he's hit the nail on the head. But not going to.
And what does it do to the Tories? The defections aren't really supposed to. I mean, this is why our backwards bent media is so confused this morning, because defections aren't about the party to which the defection is being made. Defections are about the party from which the defector is moving. Almost always. They're trying to rewrite the rules of political journalism today to make it more about the party accepting the defector rather than the party losing the defector. Because this sense, the Tory benches are said, well, even she can't get behind this. She's not even standing at the next election, which gives her at least a patina of even perhaps credibility. If she's not standing at the next election, then the question of what's in it for her is rather harder to answer. But yeah, I'm intrigued by why you couldn't vote for them in 2019 when the alternative was Boris Johnson, Andy. I know that's not what you rang in for.
I'll be honest. No, I'll tell you, I voted for Greens. I just could not vote. Partly Labour, Greens, that way inclined. Some of the Green policies that Labour had and I still agree with. I just could not hold. I would not vote for Conservatives.
I hear you. We might have had a slightly less good-hearted conversation if you'd rung me in at that time. I think the policies were the least of Labour's problems in 2019. Thank you, Andy. Leaders, writes Lawrence, don't always do what the team wants. Inevitably, their strategic reach is greater than their followers. In admitting Mrs. Elphicke, he teaches me a lesson. This is Lawrence writing. If we really want a united country... This is strong. If we really want a united country, that means uniting with people I don't like, but who have just as much right to be in this country as I do. And I have always thought that Starmer's sober exterior contains a radical vision. And Claire writes, well, I could not understand why Natalie Elphicke was welcomed by Keir. I'm so glad that people have been able to explain it to me this morning. Thank you, James, and many of your callers. That's from Claire in Rugby. Not everyone is necessarily moving on this one, but I like that line there from Lawrence. I don't like. If we really want a united country, that means uniting with people I don't like, but who have just as much right to be in this country as I do. Given that I opened the show by saying how hard it is these days to say anything with full confidence, a lesson I learnt in particularly stark fashion when the rumours started going around on Friday that Susan Hall was about to pull off a surprise victory against Sadiq Khan, I am prepared to state with absolute certainty that Nigel Farage will never be admitted into the Labour Party. That there is a hat I will eat if that day ever were to dawn. But I'll tell you something that is not really priced in politically. If Starmer pulls it off and ends up with a massive platform and a massive majority and an unprecedentedly unified support, which is obviously what the defection of Natalie Elphicke is designed to contribute to, if I was the next Tory leader, I would start agitating immediately to rejoin the European Union. That's the only rug that is left to be pulled from under him if he gets anything close to the result that the opinion polls are suggesting that he will. Johnny's in Whitby. Johnny, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, Johnny.
I would like to say that while I personally find it repulsive that she has joined, I do think it is politically smart for him to let her in.
Can't argue with that. I've been saying it all morning.
No. I myself am an ex-Labour member.
Right.
And of course, being only 25, I can't say that Keir Starmer speaks to me as a younger person. In fact, when you look at where I am, or just north of where I am in the northeast mayoral election,
yes.
Jamie Driscoll came a reasonably close second, and that was mainly funded by younger people like myself in a grassroots campaign. I feel as if that's the one faction that Keir Starmer is not, that I can see going after in his grand unification, is younger people, because they often statistically have a lower turnout.
Yes.
So, but I feel as if that might be actually damaging to the future generation to have this grand coalition, but to be ignoring the next generation.
Yeah. Just to clarify, Labour won the North East mayoral election.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So you're doing that Corbyn thing, aren't you? With respect, you're saying we lost, but actually we won. And the fact that we didn't lose by that much proves that we're actually right.
No,
you are, mate. Respectfully, you are. You lost because the way you spoke then, even I had to double check.
Oh, my apologies.
No, that's all right. But you lost. You got spanked, but you still somehow won, or at least losing proves the point that you're right.
No, I wouldn't say losing proves that.
So what does it
anyone's
prove?
Right. Huh?
So what does it prove? Losing.
What does it prove?
Yeah, because you raised Jamie Driscoll. I was a bit confused as to why. So you lost, but it proves something positive. What does it prove?
Well, it proves that there is a group of voters
yes.
that Keir Starmer has not won over, and that is important if you're going for.
Well, he hasn't won over all the
coalition.
voters that supported losing candidates.
Hmm?
He didn't win over any of the voters that supported losing candidates.
Yes, of course.
So what does it prove?
It's important if you're trying to make that tent as big as possible. You want to essentially say, not that I'm not listening to you.
But that had nothing to do with youth, did it? It had nothing to do with youth. There's plenty of people in your corner of the Labour Party who are my age and older.
I'm an ex-Labour member.
Your ex-corner of the Labour Party who are my age and older. It's not. I don't know why you're boiling it down to a youth thing.
Because I feel as if my generation at the moment is being ignored both by Labour and the Conservatives, and I feel as if that's dangerous for both Labour and the Conservatives, especially when you look at how politically active younger people can be. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the universities, not just in the United States, but here at the moment,
yes,
and you're not seeing any support for any kind of political establishment within those universities.
Well, again, you're
you're
leaping from an expression of solidarity with Palestinian people and profound objections to the continuing carnage that Israel is visiting upon the Gaza Strip to a level of disillusionment with party politics in this country that you simply don't have the evidence to make. I'm conscious of your sincerity and your honesty. But you're not making perfect sense, Johnny. Who will you be supporting in a general election after 14 years of Tory rule?
I will be voting for the Greens because I'm not going to reward Labour for Tory failure.
Okay, and that's a position. And if, God forbid, that is the vote that sees a Tory MP get returned in Whitby, then on your head be it. It's 11 o'clock.
James O'Brien on LBC.
3 minutes after 11 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the defection of Natalie Elphicke, a particularly pungent Conservative MP, both politically, publicly, and I'm afraid I would say personally. Actually, I'm not even afraid I would say personally. Her conduct in the context of her former husband, Charlie Elphicke's conviction for sex offending and her conduct towards his victims was utterly disgusting. And so much so that you can't quite believe that accepting her into the Labour Party was a political masterstroke. But it was. At least I think it was. It's fair to say that opinion is divided. One thing I would point out repeatedly is that if the right-wing media is trying to turn it into a story about the recipient of the defector, when every other defection in history would always be about the party being abandoned, the party being defected from, then anybody who wants to see the party of government removed from power probably shouldn't help them. Probably shouldn't help the right-wing media pretend this is somehow a bigger story for the Labour Party than the Conservative Party. But a lot of stuff, I'm thinking about the last lad in Whitby. He's only 25, so he's only known Conservative rule since being 11. An awful lot of stuff is going to change as the general election approaches and the possibility of a real and meaningful change begins to take hold. Most people won't. Even people my age are going to struggle to remember what it was like before a Conservative government. You should sort of, maybe not my age, but, you'll be well into your 30s. You become politically conscious when you start paying tax, or you become politically conscious when you get a vote. It's an extraordinary moment in British politics. And I think that we've possibly all become a little bit simplistic in our outlooks. And Starmer is many, many, many things, but simplistic is not one of them. 6 minutes after 11 is the time. A quick word to Elias, who's been in touch. James, my wife attended your book event last night, and she came away with 4 copies of How They Broke Britain. Was there any hypnosis involved? No, Elias, although she was kind enough to give me a brief Greek lesson, actually, on the correct gendering of islands, which, or at least gendering of the adjective small in the context of islands, which I have taken to heart. But she was my favourite actual audience member last night because she bought more books than anybody else. So thanks for getting in touch. Chris is in Nottingham. Chris, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Thank you.
Bear with me. We have spoken before, but I do get nervous anyway.
Oh, well, you take your time. Also, I'm in quite a punchy mood this morning, so I'll just shut up for 5 minutes and let you. Okay. I shall give you the floor, Chris.
I think it's not only a genius move; it's a necessary one. In the state that the country's in, the confidence that I draw from Keir Starmer is that I believe he understands the state that the country is in. I've been making political art for a while. In fact, we've had the pleasure of meeting in Manchester at one of your book readings.
Remember, yeah.
And I've part of it is like studying social media and people's opinions and how everyone's divided. And I really do think that Keir Starmer understands how polarised everyone is. People's opinions are all over the place, and he knows he has to appeal to a broad church of people in order to get a huge majority. And I see him,
or even to get an overall majority, because I mean, Sunak might be talking gibberish about a hung parliament, but there is absolutely no guarantee that he's going to get a big enough majority to make meaningful change. So he's conscious of landing as many wins as he possibly can, I think.
And so Natalie Elphicke, it's not particularly palatable. I don't find it. I would hold my nose over it, but she's not standing. Yeah. It's a good punch on the nose to the Conservative Party. Like you say, she's lobbing hand grenades back at them on the way. The optics of it is damning for the Conservative Party. But like Keir Starmer's playing the most important game of 3D chess this country's ever seen. And any good chess player knows that you can use your opponent's the positions of your opponent's pieces to trap the king. Sometimes you have to use whatever weapons are available to you. Now, I've had this conversation with a friend of mine who's always been a Labour voter, and he says he can't vote for them over Palestine, which I understand. I wish he would go further over Palestine as well.
I do as well now. I mean, I have done for a while.
The shadow of Corbyn, and it's not necessarily the anti-Semitism itself. It's the fact that anything that leans anywhere towards that, the right-wing media and the Conservative Party themselves. You saw Sunak yesterday at PMQs trying to push anything that could make Keir Starmer or the Labour Party appear anti-Semitic.
Or even anti-Israel, actually. I mean, he cited Sadiq Khan, didn't he? Saying that he's just as outraged by the actions of October the 7th as he is by the killing of 14,000 children in Gaza. I mean, it's not objectively or statistically a very controversial thing to say, but you're right. It remains a weapon that Tories will attempt to wield.
He's adept at taking weapons off the table.
He is, isn't he?
And that's what he's been doing this whole time. I've been following it for the past 3 years now. Well, the chaos as it's ensued, with an unhealthy obsession towards
you're clearly possessed of a mind that can change. That's the thing, because I mean, I think we both had the same gut reaction, which was, what the flip are you playing at? She's absolutely vile. But then the more you think about it, the more you listen to voices that perhaps are more thoughtful or even more informed or experienced, and the clouds begin to clear, and you see something that's a heck of a lot more, makes a heck of a lot more sense than it originally did. I want to just wind you back to something you said previously, because I think this is at the heart of it, and I certainly missed this to start with, which is the idea, and it's also a point that Lawrence made in that text that I've read out a million times. If we really want a united country, that means uniting with people I don't like, but who have just as much right to be in this country as I do. So we will need at some point lines, won't we? We will need to know where the line is. That, for example, if Natalie Elphicke were permitted to stand as a Labour candidate, what would she not have been able to do, if you see what I mean? What would have been the things that made her someone that isn't able to stand as a Labour candidate? If another defector comes forward, if, I don't know, Andrew Bridgen wants to defect to the Labour Party, the things that, in the circumstances in which you would say no. But outside the context of defections, who are the people that Labour can afford to say it doesn't want the votes of? Because at the moment, we both sound a bit like we don't know the answer to that question.
Well, he said... It was quite a few PMQs ago, where he made it clear he didn't want the Britain First Tommy Robinson crowd.
And Farage as well, of course. He kept using Farage, didn't he?
He clearly called Farage out in that barrage against Liz Truss,
right.
when he was weaponising Liz Truss's trip to America against Rishi Sunak.
And pushing Sunak to saying that Farage would be welcome in your party. I mean, his Starmer's spokesman yesterday failed to provide a clear answer to that question, but I think it was almost rhetorical. So somehow Farage will represent... So you could say we will nibble away at the side of Reform voters who have been persuaded that this is a major issue, but we will nibble away at them not by indulging what they think is the major issue, but by reminding them of all the other things that matter and the areas in which we can improve their lives.
I mean, from that list that you read out earlier, you can go for the people who want defence, strong borders, and less crime on our streets. Like those are the people he's going. Those are the people he's going for. You could say housing as well, given Elphicke's reputation towards that, which is a good one.
Yes, it is.
So there is a positive there. If I go back to talking about weapons, it's not even like people who are going to find this abhorrent and would turn themselves and say, oh, I can't vote for that. It's like he's not taken this weapon and put it in his toolkit. He's taken this weapon, he's beaten Sunak on the head with it, then he's thrown it in the bin because she's not standing. It's just.
No, I think that's absolutely it.
It says, I'm thinking about you. He's a pragmatist, and that's what I like about him. I'm sick to death of characters parading around Westminster telling us they know what's best for us. I see the potential for Keir Starmer to be a transformative Prime Minister who can take us back to a place where we are united, because we haven't been
and more
since just before 2016. And it's telling. We are socially fractured.
Take it back
further. And he understands it.
Yeah. Listen, if we're wrong, we're wrong. But crikey, I'd rather be hopeful than desperate.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I think we both sound a bit hopeful.
Let's just judge him when he's in power. You can say what you like about what he's trying to do and how he's trying to position himself around the board. Anything that goes slightly, I feel a horrible taste in my mouth about. I don't believe his stance on Palestine. I really don't. I think it is just it's taking those weapons off the table, because if they can be weaponized, he will first lose.
You can accuse me of this. You can resurrect the ghost of the previous leadership. You can do all of these things that people have shown time and time again they are susceptible to. So you might find the weapon ridiculous. You might find the weapon absurd. You might find the people who fall for it contemptible. But he doesn't. He recognises both the power of the votes of the people and the power of the weapons that persuade them. So he diffuses all of them. And if it turns out that he hasn't got the bottom that you think he's got, then you, I sense, Chris, will not only be the first to say so, but you will be creating some art to prove the point.
The stakes are far too high to take a risk. Oh. I held my nose and voted for Jeremy Corbyn over Boris Johnson's Conservatives, because I knew exactly what Boris Johnson's Conservatives and where they were going to take this country, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. On a more serious note, is that a collared dove or a cuckoo in the background?
I think it's pigeons.
No, it's not a pigeon.
Yes, it could be.
It's not.
It's up in a tree. I can't see it.
It might be a wood pigeon.
There's many birds that float around
here. It's absolutely beautiful.
We have some pigeons that fly around here.
Everyone is commenting not only on the quality and calibre of your contribution, Chris, I have to say. I don't want you to think they focused entirely on the bird song in the background, but rarely has the soundscape behind a caller attracted quite as much attention as yours. Are you actually up a tree at the moment?
No, my phone reception, I work in a very small village, and the phone reception in my workshop is absolutely terrible. So I've had to take a little wander to a park area. So a lovely place to have a great conversation.
Well, I tell you what, you could have come on spitting all sorts of bile and it somehow would have been okay because of the beautiful bucolic sounds in the background, but you didn't. You were talking, I thought, wonderful sense. In fact, Ali in Worcestershire takes the point further. Says, I'm a regular listener, James, but wow, I don't think my mind has ever been changed as much as before as on this topic. Many thanks to you and your brilliant callers, like Chris, for sharing a different light, for shining a different light on this issue. Hey, that's what we're here for. It's 11:16.
James O'Brien on LBC.
19 minutes after 11 is the time, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. One of the, I can't remember whether I've ever told you this before, but with WhatsApps and texts coming into the studio, obviously there's an archive, so I can see stuff that you've sent in before. So if you're sending me a message saying, after the cheap, tawdry, opportunistic Elphicke stunt, Sir Softer definitely won't be getting my vote, but it's very funny to hear O'Brien perform all sorts of contortions to justify it. The guy is such a hypocrite. I can see all the messages you've sent in before, Paul. So I'm not going to humiliate you, obviously, by reading them all out, but I think we all know that you're a liar. And it's a waste of my time. No, it's a waste of your time to lie like that. I find it fantastically amusing. We all do. But next time I will read out a few. If you're claiming this is the straw that broke the camel's back, I'll show everybody all the other straws. All right, is that cool? I've got an unhinged headline for you. I've got two. If you just give me a moment, I haven't really checked the Daily Telegraph yet, but I can normally be fairly confident that by the time I get to the comment pages, we will have found ourselves oh my days, that's an absolute hum. So I've got two competing with each other as well. Can we do a competition on unhinged headlines? Would that work? Would you like to pick the one that's most unhinged? It's going to be interesting.
Unhinged headline.
I'm a cyclist, but I can't stand them, and I now fully expect that one of these hunched morons dressed as an insect in lycra will one day kill me. That is a full-page article in the Daily Mail. by Peter Hitchens. I am a cyclist, but I can't stand them, and I now fully expect that one of these hunched morons dressed as an insect in lycra will one day kill me. So that is in the red corner this morning.
Unhinged headline.
Over at the Telegraph, Alistair Heath, who I think is becoming the patron saint of unhinged headlines, he writes, the British dream is fading, replaced by a nightmare of sectarian division. And this is something that the Tories have obviously all agreed that they're going to try to start punting into public discourse at the moment. That sectarian division, which essentially means that some Muslim people are getting votes. You know, it's a bit like what 30p Lee tried to do with Sadiq Khan in London before he got slung out of the Tory party. But, of course, 30p Lee probably, and I could be wrong, I don't want to do the fella a disservice, I think he might not know. All right, I'm going to say something now, and then I'm going to tell you something interesting. Oh, no, first of all, I'm going to finish Unhinged headline. So what I was about to say then was that 30p Lee probably doesn't know what the word sectarian means. So he just went for straight Islamophobia. What these people are using the word sectarian to do is to camouflage Islamophobia. So I stand by all of that. But the bit that I said about 30p Lee being too stupid to know what the word sectarian means, that's quite relevant to the broader conversation that we're having today. But before I tell you why, I would invite you to choose which is the most unhinged headline today, Hitchens or Heath. So Hitchens gives you, I'm a cyclist, but I can't stand them, and I now fully expect that one of these hunched morons dressed as an insect in lycra will one day kill me. We've spoken a lot about the sort of zoning out of people to attack, running out of people to attack, and poor old cyclists apparently have been left in the firing lines. Or are you going to vote for Heath? The British dream is fading, replaced by a nightmare of sectarian division. Your choice.
Unhinged headline.
Here's the thing about 30p Lee, and I'm going to bring gammon into it as well. So you will never hear Starmer use the word gammon as a pejorative. I don't think you would. I'd be very surprised if he has. And similarly, I don't think you'd ever hear him. He might accuse somebody of prejudice or even Islamophobia, but I don't think he'd ever say 30p Lee is too stupid to know what the word sectarian means, even if it was true. And that is the thing that's been haunting me since I read out Lawrence's text. If we really want a united country, that means uniting with people I don't like, but who have just as much right to be here in this country as I do. Because I'm part of the problem there. I'm not part of the solution. I relish in denigrating and attacking the people who I think are responsible for the mess that we're in. And I say a lot, contempt for the con men, compassion for the con, but I don't make the distinction anywhere near as clearly as I should. I'm not sure I could. Maybe it's too difficult a distinction to make. But that's going to be really hard. And in fact, what's odd about some of the abuse coming into the studio today from people who would see themselves as being to the left of me or being opponents of Keir Starmer is they're kind of proving the point. They're kind of proving the point. If you want to remove the bile from politics, and I believe that Keir Starmer really does, then you have to start being at least quiet and at most equable towards people that you really don't like. I'm not ready to do that yet. I'm not ready to do that yet. I hadn't really clocked that before. Just right then, when I was about to call Lee Anderson stupid, I realised that the lesson of today's phone-in has been that Starmer feels the need to reach out to people who are currently way over on the other side of the road. Now, I don't think that there would be a warm welcome in the Labour Party for 30p Lee or any of the other absolute headbangers, but there's a lot of space between Keir Starmer and, let's say, Nigel Farage or 30p Lee. There is a hell of a lot of space between Keir Starmer, and this is it, we've got there. Thank you. I love it when you school me, actually, and I feel the clouds clear live on the radio. Think of all the space between Keir Starmer and 30p Lee. And remember, crucially, that 30p Lee was in the Labour Party until relatively recently. I think he campaigned for Jeremy Corbyn in 2017. Was it 17? Against Theresa May. Think of all the space between Keir Starmer and 30p Lee. And somewhere between those two poles sits the relatively repugnant Natalie Elphicke. But you see, I'm still calling her relatively repugnant. I'm a radio presenter. I'm not a politician. But still, somewhere between Keir Starmer and 30p Lee sits Natalie Elphicke. And Keir Starmer has sent a message to people who sit near her that there is room for you in this party. It doesn't mean he's going to reach all the way to 30p Lee, but it means he is going to reach all the way to Natalie Elphicke. And for all the clever analysis today about pragmatism and 5D chess, I hope he doesn't reach any further. Just as a personal position, I hope he doesn't reach any further towards 30p Lee than Natalie Elphicke. I don't see why he would. I don't see why he would need to. I think there may be more defections, but I don't think any of them will be quite as potentially pungent as this one. But here it is. In between Keir Starmer and 30p Lee lie millions of voters. And what he has done by accepting the defection of Natalie Elphicke is say to hundreds of thousands of them that this could be your party too. Now, if you don't want Labour to win because you're still nursing your wounds about supporting the last leader, or if you don't want Labour to win because you are troubled by Starmer's perceived lack of ideological purity or any of those things, that's fine. But if you do want Labour to win, this is the analysis you need to understand why what happened yesterday was a good stroke, potentially rather brilliant thing. All of the people sitting between Keir Starmer and 30p Lee have votes. And you might not like this, but their vote is worth exactly the same as yours. So what he has done by accepting this defection is say to everybody, literally every single person that sits somewhere between Keir Starmer and 30p Lee, every single one of them received the message yesterday that this could be a party for you, up to and including wherever it is that Natalie Elphicke sits on that scale. And that, what's the time? 11:29, after 90 minutes of phone-in radio, when I thought at 10 o'clock this morning that I was here to teach you some lessons. After 90 minutes of phone-in radio, you've taught me that. You've made me see that. Combination, Chris's call, I think, crystallised it. Lawrence's text, we began with Andrew Levy's thread on Twitter. Sarah, the teacher and Labour activist. Also, the people to whom I was a little bit rude. The people to whom I was a little bit curt and short because I didn't like their position. Knit all of that together, tie all of that together, and I get it now in a way that I didn't get it at 10 o'clock. That's what he did yesterday. He said to the people that are sitting in that space, and they are not only legion, there are hundreds of thousands of them, but they are also possessed of a vote worth exactly the same as your vote. And he said to all of them, there's room for you, or there could be room for you in this party. And if you're uncomfortable with that, then you're uncomfortable with the idea of victory. 11:30 is the time. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:33. It's Mystery Hour on the way. I think that's why we allowed ourselves to stretch our legs on this one. Also because it is genuinely fascinating. I think sometimes the subjects I enjoy the most are the ones where you think you know what I'm going to say and you don't like it. And I say that as if you're listening to this as someone who is broadly in agreement with me. And of course, that that is by no means all or necessarily even most of the people who are kind enough to tune in every day. But I like to think things through. And I can't remember the last time I've really felt my cogs whirring quite as warmly as they have in the last sort of 40 minutes in particular, but in the last 90 minutes as well. I hope it's been similarly enlightening for some of you. And we will have a conversation. I think we're going to have a conversation soon about how rude we should be. Bearing in mind there's a big difference between a gob on a stick or a shock jock or a radio presenter or whatever phrase you prefer than there is between being a man seeking power, seeking office. But I don't know. I wonder whether perhaps it is time to slightly dial down the... I don't know if I could, even if I should. 11:34 is the time. Sarah picking up on a call from another Sarah earlier, says, my favourite takeaway phrase from James on LBC today, re the repulsive Natalie Elphicke defecting to Labour, is that we have to be prepared to lick the slimy frog. I've not heard that phrase before. I don't know if Sarah made it up on the spot, but slimy frog is quite a good example of what I'm talking about with regard to whether or not, the question of whether or not we have to start being a little bit nicer. Shaka is in Dagenham to steer us back to the conversation under discussion. Shaka, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. I'm a first-time caller, please, if you can bear with me a little bit.
Of course, take your time.
And I want to thank you for your program, your stance on some of the things, helping some of us with our mental problems.
Thank you.
I'm a refugee in this country. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for where you stand on some of these issues.
Thank you for that. Go on, tell me why. Now, there's a big but coming, Shaka. I can tell, isn't there? There's a big but.
No, why I disagree with Natalie.
Yes.
Her stance on immigration.
Okay.
As you can hear from my voice, I'm an immigrant. I agree with Keir Starmer where he's taking the party to being a broad church, allowing other people that have concerns about immigration to fit in.
Yes. And
to try to do whatever it takes to get this current government out. The reason I'm saying that is because whether you're an immigrant, whether you're British, I think the effect of the past 14 years is having on everyone. I'm saying everyone because the area where I live, there has never been a Labour government winning in Torok. They have won this time around. That will just tell you what is going on.
Things are changing
around the country. So they invested all the council money into a solar panel system that basically they lost 700 million.
There is something rather beautiful about me being educated by a refugee upon the Thurrock Conservative Council's profligate waste of money on a ludicrous scheme that they thought was going to make them that to me is British values in a nutshell, Shaka.
Yes,
if nothing can unite us, then surely the profligacy of a local council can unite us all.
Yes, I think the failure can unite all of us.
Yes, it can.
And one of the biggest problems down there is a little boat. I don't know whether you've heard about that issues of that boat crossing from Tilbury to Gravesend.
No. That
takes all the children to school. So our children goes to a grammar school. That boat was sponsored by Kent and Torok, and we do pay some amount to cross every day there. That boat, after 30 years, has been taken out because the councils can't sponsor it anymore. So my children are going to school now. They take about 3 hours to get to Gravesend instead of 1 hour, 30 minutes. Or 1 hour, 20 minutes.
This is local politics in a nutshell. I'm going to steer you back, if I can, to national politics. Could you explain to somebody who is upset, outraged, whatever it may be, disillusioned by the acceptance of the defection of Natalie Elphicke, why you think it was the right thing to do?
I think people have to look beyond their own stance on some of these things. The Labour Party has to be a broad church to win a big majority. And some people do have concerns. Okay, let's assume that what would have been the headlines of the newspapers today if Keir Starmer would have rejected Natalie into the party. They would have turned that on its head to say that the Labour Party wanted free for all. I'm saying this as an immigrant. And they would have said that it's just because on that her stance on immigration that she has been rejected, and that would have been even more damaging to the Labour Party.
Days. You're right.
So you have to look this in another way. The newspapers today, all of the newspapers would have been writing so much things about immigration today.
No room in Keir Starmer's Labour Party for anybody who's got any concerns at all about...
That is exactly what is even more damaging to the Labour Party than what she has done. Because Keir Starmer is just like the internet. They are trying to hack into the internet Hackers are everywhere at this current time. If he takes a foot wrong from now to whenever Mr. Sunak will call the election, if he takes any foot wrong, because you can just imagine what these newspapers can do. He's not over yet. He's not over yet.
You're absolutely right. He's not over the line. That I don't know if you've heard the analogy I use all the time, Shaka, about carrying a Ming vase across an ice rink. He's not on the other side of the ice rink yet. But I mean, I thought I was good at analysing right-wing media. The idea of what they would have done if... I mean, for a start, Natalie Elphicke would have probably had to have cooperated, and I'm not sure she would have wanted to. But it's a counterfactual in which... he does what all of the people who are cross with the decision think he should have done and says, sorry, there's no room for you in this party. It gets out. It gets onto the front page of the Sun or the Daily Mail or the Daily Express. And instead of writing nonsense about how it's a shameless betrayal, they would instead be writing about how Keir Starmer can't even break bread with people who think someone from Dover who has a problem with elements of the current immigration system, or indeed with the boats, regardless of whose fault it is that people can't come here via a safe and legal route. Regardless of whose fault it is, Keir Starmer won't even tolerate somebody who has expressed misgivings about it in the past.
Indeed. So that is the biggest problem. And James, you guys are always forgetting about some of us. There is over 100,000 or 500,000 of us that came from Europe with our passport to this country. We have never been spoken about. I know everyone asks why people leave other country, 3 safe countries, 10 safe countries to come to this country. It's just because most of us are born in a country that was colonized by this country. So I'm a Dutch citizen, and I'm happy that I didn't give up my Dutch passport when I came to this country. That would have been like committing suicide or shooting myself on my foot. I did think about it when I moved here 12 years ago, but I didn't do it. So I still kept my Dutch passport, and I'm happy about that decision. But we have been forgotten about completely. There's 500,000 of us came to Europe, qualified in... I had three different qualifications. Yes. And I came to this country, and I didn't take benefit for one day. I went straight into a job. I can drive heavy vehicle. I have other qualifications. So I jump from job to job because the things I do, I will never run out of work. I work in the construction industry.
Why do you say that you're forgotten about? Just clarify that for me a bit.
We haven't spoken about, they just spoke about the small boat. The reason that people come from safer countries to this country. So I came here with my passport and my family. So I wasn't chased or any other thing. So it's a it's a passage that doesn't really exist anymore, isn't it? That's a passage that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, so that's part of the reason why it's not being spoken about as much as you would like. But you're absolutely right. It means that you feel squeezed out of the conversation, and all we get is sort of lazy stereotyping of people in dinghies who will have stories just as rich and important as yours, but your stories are being ignored, and they will be stories of positive contribution.
That's correct, and I just think the wonder thing is just madness. Honestly, if anybody wants me to help with how they should do this asylum thing to reduce the cost and everything, honestly, I will contribute, because I used to interview people in the Netherlands when they come for asylum. Yeah, but wasting 1.8 million on one person, why the country cannot even support a boat that crosses with students and people that works from Grazing coming to Tilbury to work. There are thousands of people every day that go back and forth. No one can support that boat, and now they just leave us in limbo. It takes 3 hours for the kids to go to school. Yesterday they get home by 6:30.
So are you telling me that this is a small boat that the Tories have managed to stop, Shaka?
Yeah, that's just a boat there. Just a little boat.
There you go. I mean, maybe that's what they were talking about when they kept saying stop the boats. They meant that. They meant the Tilbury ferry. Who knew that was what the secret agenda was all along. Shaka, thank you. You've taken me right up to 11:45, and I hope we'll talk again. And I will take on board what you've said about remembering stories, remembering people like you, and clearly positive contributions like yours. Because, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sometimes you forget that you are seagulls, not trawlers. Some days we manage to be trawlers, but other days we're seagulls, and we're following the trawler, following the agenda set by other people, set by the rhetoric of politics, the rhetoric of politicians. But today has been one of those days where we seem to have managed to be both. It's 11:45.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:48, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Listen, I get a bit carried away sometimes, particularly when I feel that the calls have taken me to a place I wouldn't have got to before. But the phrase that I've been said by someone who I can tell you has worked on various campaigns at a very high level. Just try this on for size. Starmer has given permission to Tory voters to vote Labour next time. And that's perfect. Because you are perfectly entitled to say, but I don't want Tory voters to vote Labour next time, or I don't want to be an umbrella that is big enough to accommodate Tory voters. That's my gut reaction sometimes, especially when you think of what the Tories have done over the last 14 years. But Starmer has to step beyond that. I'm not 100% behind this. I wish that they had managed to create an electorate in which you wouldn't have to appeal to people who have got their fingerprints upon much of the mess of the last 14 years, particularly the mess, of course, of the last 8. But I don't think it's doable. Starmer has given permission to Tory voters to vote Labour. Try that on for size. Does that help? Helps me. Alan's in Manchester. Alan, what would you like to say?
Yeah, regarding this criticism of Starmer, I mean, I'm a councillor in Greater Manchester. I go back to December 2019 when we got hammered at the polls. I think it's worst result since 1932 or something.
36. I'm such a pedant. I mean, I've probably got it wrong anyway, but in a very long time.
No. But what people were saying, James, in the party was this is going to take us 2 electoral cycles to get anywhere near back into power.
How quick we forget, eh?
Yeah, and, touch wood, please, I'll just say we're in a lot better position, and Keir Starmer will have thought this through. That is his lawyer instinct. He'd have done the pros and the cons, and as all the calls have been, some really great calls today. Yep. At the end of the day, we need people to change their vote. I mean, it happened in Bury, somewhere where we've never got in North Manor. We got in by 44 votes.
Wow.
We got in. And other places in Bury where we've never been in, we're getting healthy majorities now. And so, yeah, we do need people to change their minds, because at the end of the day, I'll say this, James, if that lot somehow get in again, this country will not be worth living in. It's already bad now. But, it was worth it for one thing yesterday, James. I was watching Sunak's face at PMQs, or watching Starmer was like a cat with a mouse. He was playing with him at the end.
And his voice as well. I mean, this is why even I sometimes underestimate how powerful the right-wing media is, because I came on air this morning seeing it as a Labour story. It's not a Labour story. We needed to push back against the attempts to turn it into a Labour story, but it's a Tory story. How quick we forget not just what happened in 2019, but what happened at lunchtime yesterday.
Yeah, well,
Rishi Sunak
was the first.
He fell to pieces, didn't he? He fell apart on live television. Not literally, but he pretty much literally fell to pieces on live television, and you could almost hear the wheels turning on Fleet Street and in broadcast studios, trying to desperately turn it. And of course, people in your party who are still a bit unhappy with Keir Starmer, desperately trying to turn it into a net negative for the leader of the party that has accepted a defector from the party of government.
Well, my MP was the first Christian.
What do you mean?
My MP, the MP for Bury South, is my MP. He was the first to cross the floor.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said the first Christian. I thought, no, he can't be. And that was Jesus. Yes, okay. So it happens, doesn't it? It does. I think it was 35, not 32 or 36.
We just get on with it.
What do you say to people who, as a Labour councillor in Manchester, watching wards fall that have never fallen before? What do you say to people? Let me see if I can find one in my inbox. I probably won't be able to. Attacking the centrists and the liberals and all that kind of thing. And hang on, I might have one for you here. Here's one. Centrist hero James O'Brien defending the far right Natalie Elphicke's defection to Labour by reading out that thread in which it's claimed that Starmer needed the extreme right on board. I mean, obviously lying about a number of things, not least what the thread I've read out says. Here's another. Yeah. What was it Dennis Skinner said about Liberals? You have zero integrity, O'Brien. You're a certified soulless fraud. What do you, as a Labour councillor in Manchester, say to them, given that we've arrived at the same place on this issue?
Probably written from the biggest house in his area, and he's got the biggest card on his drive. And this is, I'll be blunt, these well-heeled trots, they drive the biggest cars, they live in the biggest houses, and they can afford a Tory government. James, when someone who was an ex-constituent of yours, when you find out that they were evicted for complaining about mould, Section 21, something needs to change. Something needs to change, James, where people, you can't do that to people, but at this time, at the moment in time, you can. When they can sack seafarers and bring in people paying minimum wage an hour, when you've got more food banks than McDonald's, when people are pulling their own teeth, when British kids are 3 inches, 76 mil shorter than the European counterparts, and I think we've got 20% of children in poverty. This has to change, James. And the only way it's going to change when we get, Keir Starmer in government. And that's the only way it's going to change.
And the only way that's going to happen is if, and this is the bit that perhaps I think we both understand why people find this pill hard to swallow, you are going to need the votes of some of the people who voted for the people who did all the things you've just described, aren't you?
Yeah, James, I find Brexit... Brexit
we don't really talk about Brexit. We don't really talk about Brexit on this programme, Alan. I don't know where you got that idea from.
I know, but the thing is, we have to say, look, the past is the past, but we need to move on. But this country will be worth living in. When I see kids pulling out of schools, where I live, I think what's the future for them?
And you got faith in Starmer to be transformative, then?
Well, yeah, he's the most working-class leader we've ever had. James, I'll say this. I'm sorry I've not read your book. I will buy it.
It's all right. It's not compulsory.
I have read Keir Starmer's biography.
Yeah, the Tom Baldwin
and,
one.
The thing is, Starmer is a decent man, a decent human, and we've not had that. We have not had that.
And goodness knows we. I hope you're right. I think everyone hopes you're right. But goodness knows we need it. I see what a bit of decency does to British politics. Who was the last decent man or woman in a position of prominence in the upper echelons, the highest level of government, not opposition? Oh, wait. Alan, thank you. It is 11:56, very nearly. Mystery Hour on the way at 12. So we can all relax, or I can at least. You can't because you've got to come up with brilliant questions and answers, but I'll be relaxing, rest assured of that. Rohan's in Chelsea. Rohan, what would you like to say?
Hi, so basically I've been thinking about this Nicola Ethical.
Nicola Ethical. Natalie Elphicke, mate. I mean, listen, we all get a bit nervous sometimes, so I'll let that part. But Nicola Ethical sounds like a Viz character, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I think I've only really read it in print mostly.
Fair enough.
So I feel like...
I've only got an hour and 4 minutes left on the programme, Rohan. I have to warn you of that.
Sorry. So I feel like with the current slate of... politics at the moment.
Yes.
So, the thing that I've been looking at recently, the thing that gets me the most annoyed is over the last 5 years, we've always seen this rotating cast of characters from the Tory party, and all of these random things always being screamed at about what is a woman, or about immigration or knife crime, and then during this whole process of everything that's happening, I'm always just sitting there who's making sure the lights are on?
Yes.
Who's making sure the water's running properly? Who's making sure the NHS is working? It's all fair and good having all of these arguments, but the country's falling apart. And I think that's the thing that's really driving me nuts about the whole situation. And I think we're finally getting to a place where everyone everywhere is just at a point where they're just you know what? We've had enough. It doesn't matter if we agree with each other.
When you put it like that, it's genuinely extraordinary. So you've got Kemi Badenoch this week banging on about how slavery wasn't really responsible for any economic benefit to the United Kingdom. And as you say, who's making sure the lights stay on? Who's making sure that they're not pumping sewage into our rivers? Who's making sure that the e-gates at the airports are working, or that the checks at Dover on fruit and vegetables are going to be as low friction as possible? And they're all banging on about stuff that ultimately doesn't affect anybody's life, except possibly some people whose fortunes are built on slavery, who may have to put some back into the public purse. Do you know, I love that. Who's making sure the lights are on?
Exactly.
No
and
one.
I think that's what the issue I think that's what's actually happening. I think that's what's actually creating such a big swing for Labour at the moment.
They just look like they want to get their hands dirty.
No. It's more just like people are just like, you know what? Yeah, forget all of the cultural politics or the what's the word? The word that eludes me at the moment. But forget all the cultural politics. Let's just get this country moving. Just moving forward. I think that's why the Tories are losing a lot of voters now. People are just abstaining
because because whatever your party history might be, or partisan record may be, this vision and sometimes we're all so used to it, right, that we fail to notice the scale of it. You've just given me a bit of a head shake, a bit of a head wobble there. It's absolutely insane that these people, Honest Bob Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch, Suella Braverman, all of them agitating now for what's going to happen after the Tories lose the next election, which is, as I keep saying, not guaranteed. But who's actually running the country? Rishi Sunak using PMQs to have a swing at Sadiq Khan. Who's running the country? Who is even showing the vaguest appetite for running the country? Except the bloke who isn't. And he's just told Tory voters they can vote Labour.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Good Lord, is it really? Already? 3 minutes after 12 on a Thursday, you say? Well, that can mean only one thing. Well, you know what it means, because the man with the voice just told you. It's Mystery Hour, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. You have a question, bubbling away in your brain, a mystery, conundrum, a riddle, but you know it has a solution. It can't be sort of a rhetorical. And somebody else listening to this programme at this moment will know the answer to the question that you ask. You will ring in with the question, they will ring in with the answer. And somewhere in that process, the magic unfolds. Somewhere in that relatively simple premise, true beauty is created. If you don't believe me, stay tuned. If you do believe me, I'll just remind you that there is also a prize now available, which is the rather splendid Mystery Hour board game. In fact, I get probably, well, no, not when I've got a book out, but I get, hang on. I get more messages now about how much you're enjoying the board game than I have at any other point since it was released, which is incredibly gratifying. So do, and also I think it's moving into a space now where people who don't even know about the radio show are discovering the board game. And that is very, very gratifying, because it's a really, really good board game, regardless of whether you listen to the radio show or not. If you listen to the radio show, it gives you a slight advantage. It gives you an introduction to the issue. But it works perfectly well, even if you don't. Could we please have the result of the Unhinged headline, James? Well, was it ever in any doubt? I'm a cyclist, but I can't stand them, and now I fully expect that one of these hunched morons dressed as an insect in lycra will one day kill me. That is the winner of today's Unhinged headline award by a country mile. And you can, of course, get the board game at mysteryhour.co.uk or indeed from your favourite online retailer. 5 minutes after 12 is the time. Mystery Hour is upon us, and there's a free board game to whoever submits my favourite contribution of the day. That is it. Management's decision is final, but you can find the full terms and conditions, because it's a proper grown-up competition this is. You can find the full terms and conditions at lbc.co.uk. So mysteryhour.co.uk to buy one, lbc.co.uk for the terms and conditions of the competition in which you can win one. Shall we crack on? I think we shall. Brian is in Loughborough. Brian, question or answer?
Afternoon, James. Love the show. Radio by the people, for the people. So it's a question.
Yes.
Why is it that carrots take forever to cook in a tomato sauce?
What?
So if you simmer carrots in water, they simmer in a reasonable amount of time, 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
If you make a tomato sauce, could be a chili or curry or whatever, you put your carrots in and they just take forever to cook.
You're supposed to sweat them.
Oh.
You're supposed to sweat your carrots and your onions, your sofrito. You sweat your hard vegetables before you put the tomato sauce in. This isn't an answer to your question. This is just cooking advice.
Oh, there we go.
Did you not know that?
No, I've never had any formal cooking training. I just,
Well, I don't want to. I only know because I've read recipe books, Brian. I'm not having a go. But goodness me, I mean, your life is about to change in an unimaginable way. When do you add the onions?
I would put the onions in first.
So you fry the onions?
Right.
Do you?
Yes.
How long for?
Yeah. It's tricky, isn't it? Getting them nice and soft without burning them.
Yeah, keep them on a low heat. You want to be looking at 10 minutes. You want to get them as soft as you possibly can with the carrots in there at the same time, and some celery as well. So you sweat them all. Sweat the carrots, the celery, the onions. Chuck your garlic in a bit later in that process, but give yourself 10 minutes to sweat your carrots, mate.
And then they'll cook properly.
And then you add to the. Then you chuck the tomatoes in. I think the Italians call it sofrito, don't they?
Bingo. Well, there we go.
You're welcome.
Wow.
So I don't know what the answer to your question is. Probably something to do with the boiling point of doesn't heat up tomorrow. I don't know. It's a good question, but I think we can all agree that you've already hit the jackpot today, Brian.
There we go. Well, I should phone up you for cooking advice more often.
No, that's the extent, really. I think that's about as far as I go. But I shall give you we should try and find out the answer. What a brilliant thing that is! You're going to have. Let me know, won't you, how you get on? Because the next bolognese you cook is going to be magnificent. Gone are the days of you having crunchy carrots polluting your bolognese, Brian. Seriously, it's going to change everything for you. But we will find out about why do carrots take longer to cook in tomato sauce than they do in water. I can't do everything. I'm not Delia Smith, but sweat just means you're cooking them not in anything. So think about it. If you're in the bath, well, you can actually sweat in the bath. I don't want to overcomplicate things. So you chop up your carrots, you chop up your onions, you chop up your celery. You should always have celery in your base. Lob it in a pan with a bit of oil in and keep it just on a low heat, low to medium, so that it's sweating, so that the heat is there, but it's not going to brown. And there you have it. You know what's going to happen, don't you? It's going to be a cookbook next. Hannah's in Manchester. Hannah, question or answer?
Hello, question, please.
Hello, Hannah. Carry on.
So, why is it when you go on an escalator that's not on, so you're standing onto it, and you get the sensation of being pulled, even though it's not on?
I think we've done this before, and I think the answer is that you think your brain is telling you that you're about to start moving.
Okay.
Because every single time that you have encountered that scenario before, you have started moving. Or maybe not every single time, but there is a relationship between your brain and your eyes and your body that is saying, prepare for movement. The message going from your brain, the message going from your eyes to your brain is, we're getting onto that moving staircase. Even if another part of your brain is saying, oh, look at that, it's broken. The message is still reaching your brain saying, look, we're getting onto that. Your subconscious is saying, we're getting onto that moving staircase, even as your conscious is saying, oh, what a shame it's broken. And then the brain sends the message to the rest of your body saying, brace for action, we're on the moving staircase.
Yeah, okay.
That's it.
That's great. I'm very happy with that.
I don't have any qualifications to point to or to cite, so I am going to leave it on the board for someone with at least an A level in a relevant subject to confirm, or indeed to make a mockery of me, Hannah, and reveal that I've just sold you a complete pup. But I shall get you an answer by 1 o'clock today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. You don't want to be caramelising your onions at that point in proceedings, Gary. Honestly, well, I suppose you could, but it's about. He was talking about soft carrots, so you're sweating your sofrito. Mark is in Ceuta in Portugal. Mark, question or answer?
James, hi. It's a question, please.
Carry on, Mark.
And just quickly, that Full Disclosure with Fatima Whitbread was top radio, 10 out of 10.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. She's a magnificent woman. I think there's 10 of her. I'm doing a little bit, a tiny bit of involvement in her charity. And she keeps me up to date with all of her developments. And there must be 10 of her. The amount one day she's in another country meeting a minister of this or that or the other, and then she's campaigning here and campaigning there. She's a magnificent human being, Fatima Whitbread. One of my all-time favourite Full Disclosures. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Thank you.
That came through big time. So I've got a question about wine.
Yes.
When I used to pick grapes in France, which I used to do regularly, they always told me that white wine, you want to watch that, it winds you up. Ça s'énerve in French. It winds you up.
Is that a thing?
Now here I'm in Portugal, and they tell me that white wine is bad for your bone joints, your knees and your hips and your elbows.
Is that right?
So, this is what they tell me. So I'm wondering, are these rural myths, or is it possible that the chemical constituents of white wine is so different from red wine that it could have a different effect on your body?
Well, let's begin with first principles, will we?
Go on.
Do you recognise it from your own personal experiences?
Absolutely not.
You don't at all?
No.
I do. I thought it was just me. What do the French call it?
It winds you up. Ça s'énerve. It winds you up.
Ça s'énerve.
C to the A.
Yeah.
S apostrophe énerve. Ça s'énerve.
Oh, énerve, as in enervate. Énerve.
Yeah, exactly.
So ça s'énerve? Well, I'll tell you what, mate, it enerves me like nobody's business.
I have to say, I have seen some ladies wound up on white wine.
White wine is the one that gets me, more so than almost anything else. Back in the day, it would have been Stella Artois.
Okay.
That sort of brought out my less friendly side. But white wine compared to, using me exclusively as a case study, I would say that it's absolutely true. But you're interested in chemical composition, not my obnoxious behaviour in public places.
Can they be that different, so that they have different effects?
Well, it's just the skin, isn't it, that makes it red?
Well, it depends how they make the white wine. I mean, sometimes they press them straight away and just ferment the juice.
So the
fermentation. And sometimes they ferment the whole lot together. I don't know if that makes a difference as well.
Don't tell anyone, Mark.
Go on.
Keith's doing a wine course.
Is he?
Yeah.
I'll keep it quiet.
Keep it under your hat. He might know. Do you know this? Have you got how many lessons? How many lessons have you had so far? He's only had one lesson so far, Mark. They haven't got onto this yet. Ça s'énerve. I shall find out for you. Does the white wine have a chemical composition sufficiently different from the red wine to explain the stories that Mark has heard in both France and Portugal? In France, it makes you a bit crazy, the white wine, ça s'énerve. And in Portugal, they claim that it will have an effect upon your joints and what have you. I love that question. Roberto is in Bromsgrove. Roberto, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
I was listening to a podcast a little while ago. It was all about why people faint and sort of what's going on there and why people are more susceptible to it. And they mentioned about smelling salts and how you can create a smelling salt and that will wake somebody up.
Yes.
So what I want to know is, how do they work? What is the mechanism that, by waving this magical fluid under somebody's nose, it suddenly brings you out of being passed out and brings you back to life?
Yeah. I mean, is it not just a really, really pungent smell that just assaults your senses?
I mean, potentially, but would that then work with any really pungent smell?
Yeah.
Could you just wave,
Well, you could use ammonia. I mean, what's in smelling salts?
Well, yeah, I think it is ammonia, from what I understand. But again, is it unique to ammonia, or is it?
Is that what? So, what is it specifically? Could you use? What's a really pungent smell? Could you use blue cheese or something like that? No, it's not quite this. Yeah. It gets up your nose in a different way. It must be something to do with the speed with which the liquid turns into gas, I reckon, Roberto, or vapour. It turns into vapour so quickly it goes up your nose like a rat up a drain pipe, perhaps.
I mean, very possibly.
It's a great question.
Is it something special in that ammonia or?
It's a great question. What is it about smelling salts that makes them so good at being smelling salts?
Yeah, exactly.
This is what we want to know. Nice one. Thank you, Roberto. I grew up near Bromsgrove. Did you know that?
I did, yes. Kiddie Way, isn't it?
That's the one, yes. So you've got Chaddesley Corbett sitting just between us like a sort of like a football. It's 12:16.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Ethical. That's perfect, wasn't it? And then, of course, Shaka then went on to make, not Shaka, Rowan went on to make one of the best contributions of the day. Who's making sure that the lights are on? Shaka, in my mind, because if I had to pick a top caller from the first 2 hours of the programme today, I think I absolutely struggle to put a cigarette paper between about 10 of them. I mentioned that because you can, of course, use Global Player to rewind live radio or to listen later at the Global Player app. But the 2 hours on Natalie Elphicke or Nicola Ethical, as I will now always think of her, talk about irony, a very, very special radio. For politics stuff, it was among the best we've done in a long time. And you're all doing the same joke, but I like it. So we've got this from Thomas. Chaddesley Corbett, didn't he get kicked out of the Labour Party a while back? And Mark says, Chaddesley Corbett, I went to Portugal with his sister. It is one of those names. It's a little village where I went to school. It's just outside. It was in between Kidderminster and Bromsgrove, which is why I mentioned it to Roberto. But I always thought it'd be quite a good name for a detective from the sort of Agatha Christie era. Chaddesley Corbett, you know, like Hercule Poirot, but English. It'd be Chaddesley Corbett. No? Oh, I don't know why I bother sharing this stuff with you. Jim's in Woking. Jim, question or answer?
Question, James.
Carry on, Jim.
It's about groins.
Oh, yes.
Now, don't panic. We're talking sea defence groins, not groins.
Groins with a Y.
Absolutely.
Carry on.
How do they work? I've no idea.
Well, I've given... this is going to sound most unlikely, but I've given this quite a lot of thought.
Really?
Yes. So I spend quite a lot of time in Norfolk, and there's quite a lot of groins in Norfolk. So it must be... because I think that the basis of your question is the presumption that the tide comes in and out in a sort of vertical fashion, right?
Possibly.
No, I should explain what a groin is. Actually, you can do it. You can explain what a groin is. I've been working since 10 o'clock this morning. Go on. Tell everyone what a groin is,
do the
Jim.
work. Aren't groins simply the rows of planks that run vertically down the beach?
Yes.
And they're sort of buttressed occasionally by bigger areas of planks and so on.
Yes.
You say you've given this a great deal of thought. I haven't. The question just popped into my head.
No, well, you would think that if you were trying to protect the beach from excessive erosion, then you'd build a big wall across the bottom of the beach where the sea comes in to stop all the sand being washed back out again. But, of course, all the water would be washed out as well. But longshore drift would see it going horizontally on the beach. So you stop epic amounts of sand being moved horizontally along the beach by using groins, which is why you'll only really find them, I think, on beaches that are pleasure beaches where you're going to have summer frolics and sandcastles and the like. and the groin ensures a much more even distribution of sand than you would otherwise have, Jim.
Very good.
I think I've done it. I think I've done it, Jim.
That sounds pretty good to me.
Our qualifications, staring at beaches and thinking, why is that there? And what can it do when it's underwater? So you go to not Holcombe, where is it? Is it Wells? Certainly Cromer. You think, so what it's doing is keeping the sand in, so I bet it's linked to pleasure beaches. And it is tackling longshore drift.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm taking it.
At beaches more.
I'm taking the round of applause for that. There'll be a steward's inquiry, but I don't care. I'll have spent it by then. Thank you, Jim. Oh, how's in Brighton? Whoa! Professor Hal in the house.
Hello, James.
Where have you been? You think I do this for my own amusement?
It's been 6 months, hasn't it?
Yeah, are you all right?
I'm fine. I'm gainfully employed at a university in the southeast teaching analytical chemistry.
Fantastic.
So it's a close-run thing, but I'm back in the game.
Oh, mate, I'm so happy. You should have let me know, though.
I wanted to be sure it was in the bag before I made an announcement. Okay. I've rung in a couple of times, but here we are.
Yeah, I heard you on another show, actually, not long ago.
Really?
Yeah. A couple of months ago.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Oh, it's fine. No, fine. Question or answer?
I was delighted to hear about the escalator one, because we have had this before, and I was very happy to make an answer to it.
Excellent.
And you hit the nail on the head, and actually almost hit it without missing it entirely on this occasion, because it is to do with the expectation. It was all to do with it's Pavlov's dogs again. That we go through this process, we touch an escalator and it takes our arm away. So the next time we do it and it's not moving, we think it ought to be moving. And it was a Russian psychologist called Pavlov who did some rather unhealthy experiments with dogs.
Ivan Pavlov.
Ivan, yeah, exactly.
Ask me how I know that.
How do you know that, James?
It was in a crossword 2 days ago in the New York Times. I knew the Pavlov bit, but I got the Ivan bit by getting all the down clues that were next to them. But it sticks in your mind. Sticks in your mind, Hal.
Yeah, it does. He rather unkindly made holes in dogs' stomachs, and he would ring a bell and then feed them, and so the gastric juices would dribble out, which is how he measured that they were ready to eat.
Oh, God.
And at some point, he failed to feed them, having rung the bell, but they still salivated, and the liquid came out of their stomachs.
Yeah.
Ghastly.
It is a ghastly experiment.
It's things like if you've changed your car and you reach for the gear stick on your old car, or when you're a passenger and someone's braking late, you start braking for them in sympathy.
Yeah.
In victims of violent abuse, they have an exaggerated startle reflex. And when you're driving overseas, momentarily driving on the wrong side of the road because you've kind of forgotten you need to be driving on the right side of the road, you're conditioned to do these things.
Is there a word for it? Like, a kind of pithy phrase for it?
Yes, operant conditioning.
Operans?
Operant, with a T on the end. Where you get
operant conditioning.
Associate one thing with another thing, even if the second thing doesn't happen, you still do the first thing.
Oh, love it. Jack's been in touch. He says, there goes my question. I was going to ask what had happened to Professor Hal. Qualifications?
Hitherto, I was Professor of Public Understanding at the University of Brighton, and now I'm a lecturer in something else somewhere else.
Let's give him a round of applause. Great to hear from you, mate. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
man. 12:25 is the time. Andrea is in Huntley. Andrea, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
I live in the middle of nowhere, along a farm track, no other gardens nearby, and I've lived here 7 years.
Yes.
And I have a tulip that has come up in the middle of my grass.
Gosh.
Now, I understand that birds transfer seeds and stuff like that, but I had understood that tulips come from bulbs. Now, I was talking to your producer, and she said, well, yes, okay, tulips can originally come from seeds, which would then grow the bulb, and I get that. But
you? Hang on, I just want to establish which producer this was who was coming over all Alan Titchmarsh. Was it you? Seriously? Okay. Pinch of salt time, Andrea, I think, if I may. Carry on.
Yeah, I just don't know how it got there, and if it does originally come from a seed, I've lived here over 6 years, and I've never had a tulip there before.
I think they can come. I think they can come from seeds. Is the short answer.
Right. Okay.
So
how long?
It will be a bird, won't it, that has eaten a seed. How long is the what? What was the other bit of the question?
Well, I just wondered if it then developed into a bulb before it then grew into the flower, and how long that would take.
Like that, I don't know. What did the producer say?
She didn't know, which is why it's a mystery.
Right, she said that out loud. Okay, you're on. So, presuming it's a seed that has spawned the tulip, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened after the seed arrived? Did it become a bulb? Does it become a flower and then die back into a bulb? I mean, there's so much going on here.
That's exactly it. And I just got this random bright red tulip in the middle of my lawn.
How delightful. Could it be an admirer?
Well, I hope so.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? It'd be quite a lovely thing to do, wouldn't it? It'd be the...
Well, I'm mowing round it because...
Well, you would, wouldn't you? You would. When one of the great regrets of my life, Andrea, is that I was a punishment towards the end of my time at school. A punishment. I had to surrender a whole weekend. I won't tell you what the transgression was because I might fall in your estimation. But I had to plant banks and banks of daffodils in my housemaster's garden, and I arranged them into a very rude message.
quite right.
And I wasn't there to see the benefits of it. I sent a picture, but you couldn't really make it out, to be honest. But I'd like to think if I'd still been there, I'd have gone out at night and pruned the daffodils just to make sure that the words in the flowers were easy to see. But your tulip is a different proposition entirely. I shall find out for you what happened. What is the life cycle of a tulip? Thank you. Could have been a squirrel. Of course, it wasn't necessarily a bird. There is always that possibility to bear in mind. 28 after 12. Pete's on the Isle of Man. Pete, question or answer? Pete.
Oh, James, sorry.
Are you,
something happened to my phone. Are you all right?
I'm great, yeah. It was you I was right about. What happened?
I'm not. I think because I had my headphones in before, when I took them off, it kept trying to reconnect to them.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Question or answer, Pete?
It's a question, James.
Go on.
So, James, I don't know whether you'll have watched it. I don't want to mean to insult you. I don't know whether you'll be too old to remember the Funhouse.
What, with Pat Sharp?
Yeah, with Pat Sharp.
And the twins?
Yeah.
All right, come here a minute, mate. All right,
yeah.
Come here a minute, you little whippersnapper.
Yeah.
Not only do I remember Funhouse, but I was hanging out at a showbiz soiree with Pat Sharp a matter of mere weeks ago.
Well, you may well be able to answer this question.
Highly unlikely. It was, since you asked, it was Chris Moyles' 50th birthday party, because that's the kind of glamorous life that I lead.
Yeah, I can't imagine this question will have come up during your time at Chris Moyles' 50th birthday.
No, but Pat might be listening. You never know your luck. Go on.
Exactly. Right. So I used to absolutely love that show. I used to watch it as a kid. I'd always sit and watch it with my mum.
It was a great show.
And if you'll remember, but in case anybody else doesn't remember, there were two groups of kids, a red team and a blue team.
Yes.
They did a load of tasks, and then the winning team got to go in the funhouse at the end, which was essentially the greatest soft play any child has ever seen.
Yes.
It looked magical, right? And the winning team went in there to do the main challenge. I remember when I was a kid, I used to get upset, and I'd say to my mum, "Oh, the losing team have come all that way. They don't even get in to go to the funhouse." Now, my mum used to say, "It's all right, I know the producer. They just let the losing team on to have a play once the cameras are gone."
That's nice.
Now, I'm almost certain my mum was just being kind to us. I don't remember her having any producer friends. But I think the only way I can actually find this out is through somebody that was either on the show or that produced the show.
This has been preying on your mind for some time, Pete.
It has, yeah.
So did the losers on Pat Sharp's Funhouse get to have a go on the Funhouse when the cameras were off as a sort of consolation prize?
Yeah.
We've had some questions over the years on Mystery Hour, Pete. But I can confidently say that we have not had this one before.
It's not in the board game, I've checked.
No, you're telling me it's not in the board game. I mean, it might be in the booster pack that I think we're getting out later this year. All right, you're on.
Fabulous. I mean, if Pat Sharp rings up, it really would be a winner.
Let's not get carried away. We might get a twin. Let's not get carried away here, Pete. But he is. I can tell you, if you're interested, he's a really, really nice man. A really nice man.
Yeah.
He really is. You're on. All right. So did the losers on Funhouse get to have a go on the Funhouse? Because Pete's mum said, and she didn't know a producer at all, did she? I don't think. But you never know. Stranger things have happened. 12:31 is the time. Amelia Cox has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:35, you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. We want to know why carrots take longer to cook in tomato sauce than they do in water. But don't worry, I told Brian all about sweating. Escalator has been done by Hal. Is there a chemical difference between white wine and red wine of sufficient significance that it would explain why in France people believe that white wine makes you a little bit punchy? And in Portugal, it is believed that white wine has a deleterious effect upon your joints, for example, in a way that red wine doesn't. I mean your knee joints and your ankle joints, not your enjoyment of other substances. How do smelling salts work and why? I thought I'd done the groins, but I suspect there's a steward's inquiry on the horizon. There's a single tulip growing in Andrea's lawn, and we want to know what happened, because we thought they came from bulbs. But apparently they come from seeds. So at what point does the bulb... Just give me a tulip masterclass, all right? And then on Pat Sharp, whoop, whoop. On Pat Sharp's Funhouse, did the losing team get to have a go on the Funhouse? Because that's what Pete's mum told him back in the day after claiming that she had a particular beeline to one of the producers. What a lovely, sensitive young lad Pete sounds like, eh? Be sitting there watching a nice television entertainment and feeling sorry for the people that lost and think, oh, I hope they get And does his mum sound lovely as well? There's a lovely little vignette there of a beautiful domestic moment on the Isle of Man in the 1980s where little Pete said to his mum, oh, Mum, do you think the team that lost get to go on the Funhouse? And Pete's mum thought, do you know what? This is a cruel, cruel world. And life, as the great Thomas Hobbes famously observed, she thought to herself, life is nasty, brutish and short. And Pete will learn these lessons, but I don't want him to learn them yet, she said to herself on the Isle of Man in the 1980s. So she turned to little Pete and she said, oh, don't worry, little Pete. I know the producer of the Funhouse, Pat Sharp's Funhouse. And they let the losing team have a go on the Funhouse after all the cameras have been turned off. And that consoled little Pete until the cruel, cruel world came calling. And that youthful idyll was polluted by the knowledge that adults can sometimes, with the best of intentions, mislead little children, and that they will sometimes tell us and indeed each other what we want to hear rather than the truth. And ever since that moment, little Pete has been, well, first of all, he's now Big Pete. But ever since that moment, little Pete and then later Big Pete have been wondering whether it was actually true. And today, he may find out. He may find out. I hope he does. Andy's in Tunbridge. Andy, question or answer?
Hello, James. Answer and slight correction to your...
groins.
So
go on.
You're mostly right. The thing that is... I would correct is it's not necessarily about pleasure beaches. It's also where we have coastal defences and the material needs to be kept in place in order to protect the toe of those defences. So longshore drift you mentioned, and you're quite right to bring that up. Visualise longshore drift as like the teeth of a saw.
Yeah.
Where you've got... If the coastline generally have a prevailing wind direction, which is usually oblique to the coast.
Yeah.
So material will be pushed up the beach on those waves as a consequence of that prevailing wind. And then when the water then recedes back into the water, the material then gets dragged down vertically. So you end up with the material being pushed along in this kind of zigzag pattern. So what we have groins in place for is to protect the loss of that material.
Yes.
So essentially, what you'll see is, if you look at groins, you'll end up with a pile up of material on one side and then a much lower on the other side. And what it allows us to then do is to regather that material and recycle it back to the beach. So we tend to have projects in, Environment Agency. We have projects all year round, particularly after the winter storms, where we recycle that material and we start bringing it back into the...
So it has an environmental benefit as well as a pleasure beach benefit.
Yeah, it's a coastal defence purpose.
But this is a mere embellishment of my answer, Andy. It's not a correction, is it?
It is, yeah. It's just a bit more detail about how the process works and the reason why
and I like
do
it, and you'll get a round of applause. But it is interesting that I work that out simply by looking at beaches and thinking.
Yeah.
Just then, well, what else could it be? They must be trying to keep it there for a reason. And if I'd thought about it for a bit longer, or if I'd been to more beaches, I probably would have realised, well, it's not just for sandcastles. It's also got a more profound purpose as well. And there it is. You've described it to us. Qualifications, I know you've alluded to it, but you know how this works.
Yeah, Environment Agency, and various qualifications in sort of earth sciences.
History Hour stalwart. Now that Professor Howe's back in the game, you're going to have to look to your guns, Andy. Round of applause, please. Greg's in Clapham. Greg, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on.
Cool. So all around town, there's these little shops where you can get your shoes fixed, cobblers, and they seem to all do engraving and key cutting.
Yeah.
I get the relationship there, but I want to know what common thread of skill training is marrying those three things up, and seldom anything more than those.
Or it'd be the machine, wouldn't it? The same machine.
Possibly, but engraving is very precise.
Yeah.
Hammering a shoe is not.
Well, you say that. Have you ever tried it? Why don't you fix your own shoes then, clever clogs? Clever clogs, do you get it? Clever clogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Very nice.
I think it's a lot harder than you think.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Oh, you mean so I thought so you're not talking about engraving and key repair. You're talking about the engraving and key repair alongside the cobbling.
Yeah, it's always those three.
Well, oddly enough, I had James Timpson on the Full Disclosure podcast last month. I could have asked him that. He's a really nice, he's a lovely bloke. Do you want to know something interesting, Greg?
Go for it.
It's not very interesting. Where do you think the busiest Timpson's kiosk in the country is?
It's going to be near a big London station.
Listen to you with your southern ways. It's outside Sainsbury's in Kidderminster.
No way.
Yeah, straight up. It's either the busiest kiosk or actually the most profitable Timpson's outlet in the whole country. I can't remember which. This is director's cut stuff, this. We didn't even do this on the podcast. This came up afterwards, so it's a world exclusive. Could you sound a bit more excited?
Well, I guess, but you weren't very certain about the fact.
No, one of those facts is true, and they are perhaps not equally exciting, but they're both world exclusives.
Right.
So why I think the answer is actual. Just it happened by they got the machine, and I don't think you use the same machine for the shoes and the other stuff, but it just made sense commercially, and then it caught on. But obviously, you're not going to accept that, so I will leave it. I will leave it on the board. Why do cobblers always double up as key cutters and engravers?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, Greg. 12:43 is the time. We need some answers. Come on. Answers. Tom's in Cincinnati, Ohio. Tom, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
Why do towels in hotel rooms work so much better than the towels that I have at home at drying me?
Superb question. What a superb question. Are they always white? No.
In my experience, hotel towels tend to be white. Okay. The towels at home are not white.
I'm
Mrs. Webb would not like those.
I'm assembling an answer in my mind as we speak. Maybe they wash them on a much higher temperature or a much lower temperature than we normally do.
But why would that make them... How would that affect their ability to dry you? And why is it so universally...
Fluffiness.
They
wash them with nothing else. Have you ever put a tennis ball in your tumble dryer with your towel?
My wife insists on using 3 of these tennis ball conditioner things instead of drying sheets. I have no idea what that does. But apparently
tennis balls fluff up your towels. I think the answer might have something to do with the fact that they wash all the towels with nothing else. But I'm not going to get a round of applause for this. Frankly, I'll probably get taken off air. It's such a poor quality answer to your question. So why?
I think the clue was the fact that you said "I think."
Yeah, that's always a bad start. I'm going to put it. I wish you'd gone a bit earlier, actually, because I want to have I really would like to know that. As Ryri's been in touch, say now that's a proper mystery hour question. I think you're absolutely right, but it's probably tumble dry, and we probably don't tumble dry our towels normally. We hang them up to dry. So if you tumble dry your towels, you probably would have hotel quality toweling. But I shall see. Someone will know. 0345 6060 973. Could we have some answers, please, to the variety of questions that remain unresolved? The time now is 12:45.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:48 is the time. Carrots, wine. No, it did the carrots. It didn't do the carrots properly. Wine, smelling salts, the tulip, funhouse, cobblers and towels. Steve's in Southampton. Steve, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on.
So it's although sweating works, it's the acidic content of
Are
what
you
you're
in the
cooking
bath? Are you in the bath?
No.
I thought I just heard some splashing in the background.
No, well, I was in the kitchen and I left the kitchen, so perhaps that's why.
Okay, never mind. Yeah, go on. Carrots in tomato sauce.
It's the acidic content in the whatever you're cooking it in, which is why you can boil carrots in water and milk and butter, for example, and they'll soften. But you could boil carrots for 6 hours in tomato and it's not going to. Although milk and butter is slightly acidic, it's closest to neutral that whatever the component or compound in the carrot is, it won't soften.
Well, I never. So, whatever. I mean, it will soften eventually, but it will just take a very, very long time.
I don't know. The chefs I've worked with in the past have said it could be 6 hours and the carrots are not going to soften.
So flipping it. So Brian in Loughborough has been eating really crunchy carrots in every sauce he's ever cooked for the best part of his life.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
And now, thanks to me mostly, but subsequently also you a little bit, he will be able to enjoy a decent. It's sofrito, isn't it? Sofrito.
I guess so. But yeah, it's as I say, the lactic acid in milk is very minimal, so you can
very mild, so it won't have an impact upon the carrot cooking process. Qualifications, Steve?
I've just been in and around kitchens professionally for like 25 years.
That'll do nicely. Round of applause for Steve.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well done, mate. John's in North Kensington. John, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
First time call, a little bit nervous, strangely. But anyway.
Whereabouts in North Kensington are you?
I'm actually in Surrey, but I live in Ladbroke Grove.
Okay, I used to live there. You could have been more specific, but then again, it might have lost the room. So crack on.
Oxford Gardens. Anyway.
Okay, lovely. Yes.
So the difference between white wines and red wines is about 3,000 compounds in each. They're pretty similar. The difference is mainly that red wines are fermented on skins, whereas white wines are taken off skins straight away. And the skins will give you anthocyanins, which is the pigment, and tannins, which is the bitterness that you get from it. So the only reason I can see that people would complain about white wine is that they generally have a higher SO2 level, sulfur dioxide, than red wines.
So worse hangovers then?
Worse hangovers and any other sort of medical things that you want to blame on white wine as opposed to red.
Would be down to the sulfur. Would be down to the sulfur dioxide.
It would be. It's a lower pH as well, which makes the sulfur quite sort of abundant.
What was the phrase? Did you remember? Sassevre. Sassenerve. Have you heard that phrase before?
Sassenerve, no.
Sassenerve.
No,
it means the white wine. I don't either, mate. You could probably tell. The idea that the white wine makes people a little bit tasty, John. A little bit a little bit you know.
Well, not really. The white wine's generally got a lower alcohol content than red wine, especially these days.
Yeah, but you drink it quicker.
14%.
You drink it
quicker.
Yeah,
you do because it's cold and it's refreshing.
So that it might just be that, mightn't it? It might just be that if someone did some research, per glass intake's probably higher per hour than it is with red wine, with a white wine, especially on a hot day.
There's also the histamine question. With red wine's got more histamines, which are meant to be good for you. So,
qualifications?
If you're not allergic to them.
Qualifications?
I'm a winemaker. I'm an international wine consultant and a chief winemaker at Denby's.
Where's your vineyard?
In Surrey, Denby's Wine Estate. It's quite big. It's about 100 acres of vineyard.
How exciting! How's business?
Very good.
Yeah,
English wine is booming.
It really is booming, and rightly so. It's lost its novelty. Well, it lost its novelty value some time ago. I mean, it's punching with the big boys now, isn't it?
It is. Sadly, it's difficult to keep the prices as low as the multiples want them. But yeah, no.
Do you do a fizzy wine by any chance?
We do.
What are you complaining about? You'll be able to sell it in pint bottles soon, John, and your world will be transformed.
Oh, that's great. Oh, yeah, I mean, it's just one of the so many benefits of Brexit.
That's it. We can have pint bottles. No one's ever expressed any particular desire to either manufacture or buy them, but hey, Brexit!
Yeah, that's great.
Round of applause for John. Good work, mate. I shall find one of your bottles and drink it this very weekend, because that's research. I always like to do a lot of research on the programme. Lovely answer from John. 12:53 is the time. Sam's in Amersham. Sam, question or answer?
Hi, James. It's an answer for you on the tulip question.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So I didn't hear the question. I only heard your summary, but I gathered that a tulip has bloomed in a lawn for the first time after 6 years.
It's the only flower ever to appear in that lawn. It's the only tulip for 400 miles. A 400-mile radius. It's the only tulip. I made up the last bit.
I don't know about the 400-mile radius, but tulips can be grown from seed. They rarely are, because they take such a long time to come to the point where we know them as a big, full, flat bloom. But if you left a tulip bulb to be pollinator comes along, and just behind the flower, that little case, that seed case, would then start to grow and fatten. And when the seed is ripe, it can be blown away or picked up by a bird and nestled in a lawn. Now, it would take many years for it to come to flower. The bulbs that we buy from typically Dutch growers have been grown in a field for many years.
So the seed grows into a bulb, and then the bulb produces a flower?
Effectively, it will fatten into a bulb.
That has been nestling in Andrea's lawn for years?
Effectively, yes.
Wow. I had no idea. Qualifications?
So I'm a garden designer, and I'm also a debut show garden designer at Chelsea Flower Show this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Are you coming along?
Are you asking? Are you asking?
It would be lovely to see you, though, if you could make it.
I've never been to the Chelsea Flower Show. I keep meaning to, but that's so exciting for you.
It's incredibly exciting. We start the build tomorrow.
Well, you'll be fine, I can tell. With you, if you get into any bother, just give them a lecture on tulips. You'll be laughing.
Unfortunately, we haven't got any tulips on the garden, but we do have other bulbs.
Oh, exciting. Well, congratulations and good luck. But regardless of what happens at Chelsea, Sam, you've got a mystery round of applause.
Thank you very much.
So you're already a winner. 12:55 is the time. Maria is in Barnet. Maria, question or answer?
I think it's an answer, I hope. Somebody. So the guy that rang earlier about the towels, about them drying and how long it takes, there's difference in towels that you get at hotels and at home. The reason I know a little bit about it is because a while back we bought some towels for home and they weren't the same. They weren't drying the same as the towels we had previously. And it got me quite interested into why there's different towels.
Yes.
Yeah, so I looked into it and I discovered something called GSM, which stands for grams per square metre, I believe.
Yes.
So that's why some towels actually will be heavier than other towels. So the lighter the towel, they say that the quicker it takes to dry.
But how does that play into the hotel versus home?
So the hotel towels, they all tend to be, from what I remember reading into it, they were like about 400 GSM, which are quite heavy, a lot heavier than the ones we have at home. So they're thicker. They're a lot thicker. So
and they go in industrial drying machines. And if you haven't got an industrial drying machine, you can't really be messing around with a 400 GSM towel.
No, that's right. And adding air, obviously tumble drying them and adding the air to them makes them more fluffy naturally.
But the higher the GSM, the better the absorbency.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I think you've only gone and done it, Maria.
Oh, I don't know. Well, it's so boring, isn't it, knowing about towels?
It's not remotely boring. It is.
If you go to the supermarket now and look at labels on towels...
Hang on. I didn't mean to encourage you to go further.
No. I hope that's answered the question anyway.
Let's find out. Yes, it has. Look at that. A round of applause. Thank you, Maria. I love that. I shall now look out for GSMs on the towels. In fact, I may raise the issue with Mrs. O'Brien when I get home. Oh, no. Not a steward's inquiry, Rosa in Edgware, surely.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Now, what the previous lady was saying is all true, but really, the reason, particularly they dry better, is because like every other item made for commercial use, they are better quality. Have you ever heard those commercials? Oh, buy this towel, they are hotel quality towel. Any item they use a commercial way, like in a kitchen. If you buy an oven, it's for a kitchen. It's gonna cost 3 times, 4 times more than a normal oven. Why? But because it gets used so much more.
Because it's never off. It's never off. I looked at ovens recently that were catering quality. I didn't understand what it meant, except that they were 3 times more expensive than all the other ovens. But that's why.
Because the quality.
So the towels are going to be you're adding a new dimension to the answer that we got, rather than challenging it.
There is
qualifications.
The qualification, yes, I've been in the industry, commercial industry for a while. So if I could just add, yes, they need. If I could just add one last thing about the towel, they get washed so much more than normal towels, so they must be made of a better quality.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you, Rose? I don't want to be using someone else's manky old towels.
Exactly.
Environment or no environment. Well, round of applause for Rosa. We didn't get a Pat Sharp. What? We didn't get a Pat Sharp answer. We didn't get. I'm going to give Pete the board game then, aren't I? Little Pete. Little Pete gets the board game. Big Pete gets it, but it's really a present for Little Pete. And that question, I will get an answer to that question one day. I need to offer an apology. Apparently, I'm told by many people who enjoy the Breakfast Show on Radio X, it wasn't Chris Miles's 50th birthday that I attended. It was actually his 30th. And that is my mistake, and I apologise for it wholeheartedly. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, the official LBC app, where you can also pause and rewind live radio. Download it now for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
James O'Brien on LBC.